do another stream. It's been a very, very long time actually. It feels kind of strange. I had a bit of a mental break, but we're back now. We're back now talking about fashion all the time and talking about all the relevant fashion news. But anyway, how is everyone doing? How is everyone doing today? Yeah, it's 5 a.m. in London right now, so very very late. It's probably going to be a bit more of an intimate stream because I can't imagine that many people will be awake at this time, regardless of time zone. Which is fine, completely fine. I just want now. I think my focus is just streaming when I can, rather than trying to stream at the optimum time. To be honest. And yes, I did get back from the gym. I did. Um, but anyway, guys, as you guys can tell from the title, there are quite a few topics to cover. I mean, so much has happened since I did my last stream as far as fashion news goes, so I don't even know where to start. But today we're going to start with the story about Demna and kind of what his plans for Gucci are. So I think that would be a really good starting point, in my opinion. Let me just get this on the screen. So, this is actually a news story that I saw via Trust Archive on Instagram. This is something that I think people are talking about on Reddit as well. People have been talking about it a lot. But essentially, Loic Demna's husband actually posted a fit pic where he was wearing archive Gucci from Tom Ford's era. Now, the interesting thing about this is he deleted this fit pic shortly after, and now knowing Demna and knowing that Demna loves a social stunt, Demna loves to play with our minds and do all this crazy marketing stuff. I definitely think it's deliberate. It was definitely a deliberate thing. It wasn't sort of like a mistake as they're trying to play it out to be. I don't think it was that. And so it's kind of Demna teasing that, he's looking at the archives, he's really interested in the Tom Ford era, and that will definitely be a focus, moving forward as far as his Gucci goes. And now it really made me think, because I think that not saying Demna's husband gives vampire, that's crazy. But on a different note, something that I find really interesting about this, right, is the fact that there seems to be this constant obsession with Tom Ford at Gucci. Now, I understand why that's the case. I am a big fan of Tom Ford. I love his time at Gucci as well. But I think we can start thinking from Alessandro Michele, right? The reason why Alessandro Michele left Gucci is because the Gucci execs felt like the reason why their sales started to slow down was because the consumer audience and market was shifting to this sort of quiet luxury, stealth wealth aesthetic. And Alessandro Michele's work is basically the antithesis of that. So they were trying to push him into designing in a way that was more in lieu with what you would expect from Tom Ford himself, right? They probably expected that from Alessandro. They probably thought he could do it because Alessandro has been at Gucci since Tom Ford, if you didn't know, and he was actually designing accessories when Tom Ford was the creative director of Gucci. So Alessandro obviously felt like that wasn't his aesthetic and he didn't want to design in a way that wasn't his aesthetic. So he left and they hired Sabato, who, for no fault of his own, kind of was under the spell of the Gucci execs, because at the end of the day, Sabato was not really a no-name in fashion. He wasn't a big name designer like the Alessandro Micheles, the J.W. Andersons of the world. So he didn't really have that much say in what happened. And if you look at the clothing that he put out, and I actually quite like a lot of what Sabato was doing. I just think as far as strategy from a branding and merchandising standpoint, just didn't make any sense. They kind of wanted him to do the Tom Ford thing. But the problem with that is you have to think of, why do people like Tom Ford's Gucci? It's not just about making clothing that is minimal. I mean, I can go on a long, maybe I will, because I'm back on the stream, so I'm going to talk for a long time. But there's so many reasons why people love Tom Ford's Gucci, right? It's the sex that he was selling, the overt sexuality. It was at a time in fashion that was dominated by quote unquote minimalism. You know, the Helmut Langs of the world, the Calvin Kleins, the Jill Sanders. That was what was really big at the time. And Gucci offered still kind of like a minimal aesthetic, but it was more sexy and it had more flair and it was more fun. And it was just, you know, more playful in a way. So that was kind of one reason why people love Tom Ford's Gucci. So you have to think of time and place, which a lot of these execs always forget. They just think, just recreate that. And it's like, yeah, but what about, you know, the current society and what's the clothing like? And how does that differ compared to back then? So that's one thing. Obviously, his designs were pushing the sexiness, the low slung trousers, the crazy necklines, the silks and the satins that I always love. Even in this video that you're seeing on the screen, you can see a lot of silks and satins on the runway. The way that they would be styled, a lot of like unbuttoning the buttons. Like look at the styling for that example. Like look at how where the buttons are, how low they've been unbuttoned, right? There's just a certain sexiness, and he was kind of really referencing this sort of 1970s glamour, and reworking it for the 90s and the 2000s, right? I think that was something that was really appealing about Tom Ford's Gucci. So you can't, if you're not going to recreate that whole energy, you can't really recreate Tom Ford's Gucci. It's not enough to just have the aesthetic and be like, yeah, you know, this is going to be Tom Ford. So that's why I think Sabato De Sarno's Gucci fell flat. It wasn't any fault of his own. I think it was the execs that just had the wrong idea completely, and they didn't really know what they were doing, to be honest, and they're just making him do stuff that didn't make sense. Like it's just, there's so many elements to Tom Ford. I mean, I talk about this all the time, right? The ads, the crazy ads, right? Stuff like the belts and the topless. It looks like he's about to take his belt off, you know, people lying down in sexy poses, the pube hair, the like models kissing and stuff. Basically, like damn this very erotic and sexual images. Like this is literally what Tom Ford was doing, right? So once again, you can't just have plain bland clothing and be like, yeah, it's Tom Ford. That's not going to make sense. It's never going to work. It just never will work, right? Um, Even Tom Ford, right? He talks a lot about in interviews. He's like, when I was in like college, and then I met like Andy Warhol, and I was at Studio 54 and all that sort of stuff. And I think he was very inspired by that. I think that's why his work is very sexy by nature. Even the aesthetic and the lifestyle around Tom Ford. Tom Ford is a really attractive guy. He's known as someone that was a party buff. That's why Hyder Ackerman, in his Tom Ford debut, literally said that Tom Ford is the night and I am the morning after. So there's a certain, you know, lifestyle that comes with Tom Ford, the jet set lifestyle, the glamour. So the slick hair, the smoky eyes. It's just, it's just you can't recreate that with just clothing alone. And I hope that Gucci execs moving forward understand that. Now going back to Demna is smart enough to know that. So I'm expecting Demna not to necessarily copy Tom Ford, but to kind of channel his own sort of aesthetic and his own sensibilities using Tom Ford's tropes and odes, which would be cool because I really want to know how he does that. We've seen in the interviews, and I've reported on this before, that Demna himself said that he's completely going away from the Balenciaga aesthetic and he's doing something completely new at Gucci. So we won't be seeing a lot of the grunge aesthetic and the punk stuff and everything being black and models walking on a mud runway. We're not going to be seeing that. So I'm very, very curious to know what direction he goes in. Is Demna going to make his grandmother's kitchen tablecloth sexy? Jeez. I think that philosophy of things, I think though, Demna is going in a different direction entirely, is my understanding. So yeah, we'll have to see about that one, to be very honest with you. Honestly, the Balenciaga stuff really got to ground, and into dust. I'm so tired of it. Yeah, I saw someone make a comment that was kind of true when I made a YouTube short about this. Someone said that they don't think that Demna can really reference a lot of the sexy nature of what Tom Ford does, because one of the reasons why Balenciaga ended up having a bad end when Demna was there was because of, the controversy with the kids and stuff. And so he can't really lean into sexy stuff because there's a lot of people already that are like, why did Demna get the job? Demna should be cancelled, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, if he wants to stay under the radar and avoid people bringing that up constantly, he can't really make things that are too sexy. And he definitely can't advertise it in his campaigns, to be very honest. There's a pretty sizable Demna fan base that will follow him anywhere, so I think his first collection should sell decently well, though I doubt it will make the turnaround shareholders want. Yeah, I think it just depends, to be honest. But I think that, yeah, do you guys think that Demna, let me ask you guys this question. Do you guys think that Demna has the cult following, the level of like Eddie Simon, where Eddie Simon goes to Dior, he goes to Yves Saint Laurent, he goes to Celine, and all of them make crazy money? Do you think that Demna has that kind of power? Because we've really only seen him at his own brand, Vetements, and then at Balenciaga. So as a creative director, obviously he's been at Louis Vuitton, Margiela, and all these brands as a designer. But do you guys think he has that same pull? Can he pull his customers there and cause them to, sell that much? Okay, David is saying Demna does not. Yeah, I would agree. Although it's to be seen. We'll only know when we see what he does with Gucci. I was kind of hoping for more fabric innovations for his time at Gucci, but Tom Ford future makes that seem unlikely. Hate Gucci's quality. Do you know something I will say though? When Sabato De Sarno was at Gucci, the quality wasn't that bad. At least the runaway stuff. I don't know about, and this is where maybe is my issue because I'm more interested in what goes on the runway. So I, talk to the team and I want to see the runway stuff all the time, and I like feel the garments and stuff, inspect the garments. But the permanent collection stuff and the stuff that's just in any store, I don't know. It's probably trash quality because runway stuff is probably made in their better factories, and the permanent collection stuff is made in wherever. He has powerful fans and friends like Kim Kardashian and Carti. I don't know. Okay, interesting. Eddie's a little more timeless, strange to say. Demna feels locked into a time and place. I think, do you know what it is with Demna? I think Eddie Simon's aesthetic is definitely timeless, but more timeless than Demna. I think with Demna, though, he has range. Like, if I'm gonna be fair to him, because I am a Demna fan, and like looking at through his collections, yes, at the end he did go a bit too grunge and a bit too dark, but early on he showed a lot of range. He was doing everything from making couture level dresses to bringing those couture sensibilities and making cocoon shaped puffer jackets. So I think he has a lot. He has a lot more range. I think that range just kind of disappeared later on in his Balenciaga tenure, probably because they were making so much money and the merchandisers were like, no, we just need this trouser in black and this sold really well. So can you remake it for this season? And that sort of stuff. So he kind of was jaded by the end of it. And you could see that he was jaded. On my Patreon, I've reviewed the interview that he did with Kathy Horan called Rethinking Luxury. Really good interview. I did point out a lot of inconsistencies with what both of them were saying, but when you watch that interview, if you haven't, you see that Demna is kind of at odds with himself in terms of where he sits and what his role is in fashion. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, I just thought it was a very interesting story. The fact that he's really looking into the Tom Ford archives. This is kind of like the main and the first main teaser we have in terms of what the direction of Demna's Gucci will look like. So looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to it. Michael says Demna needs to build his repertoire a little bit more. Demna and Eddie are in two different leagues, in my opinion. Yeah. Also, Eddie Simon has just been around for longer, so his body of work is a lot more broad. Also, the thing about Eddie Simon is that, and obviously I'm a huge Eddie Simon fan, as all of you know, but the thing about Eddie Simon is that he can do things that Demna has never even done. So like Eddie Simon has started fragrance lines almost everywhere he's been, and they've been some of the most successful fragrance lines in all of fashion, right? Demna has never launched a successful fragrance line, and that's like a big money maker. Like Eddie Simon did Dior Privé, Eddie Simon did the Celine fragrance line. So even when it comes to commerce, I think Eddie Simon is better at world building than Demna, because Eddie Simon can make every kind of product and fit it into his world. It's why he's so what's the word? He's so specific on controlling everything when he's creative director. That's why at Celine, Eddie Simon was like, I'm going to do the photography and I'm going to do the fragrance line and I'm going to do the marketing, and like, because he has to create the whole world in a 360 way. Yes, this is live. Hello, hello, hello. The next Phoebe drop references New Jack City, and Demna's referencing Tom Ford. Make it make sense. Gucci has a huge archive to work with and has a lot of resources. Should be an easier job than Balenciaga. Yes, also, and we fall into this issue a lot of times when we talk about Gucci. What actually is Gucci? Like, if we were to say what the aesthetic of Gucci is, what really is that? I don't even know what the aesthetic of Gucci is, if I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea, because everyone has gone there and done something different. Whether that's Frida Giannini, Tom Ford, Alessandro Michele, Salvatore De Sano, like everyone has done something different. So there's no real house code of Gucci unless you want to, look at what Gucci was doing, and you talk about like horsebit loafers and saddlery and luggage. But in terms of ready to wears, I don't think house codes really exist for Gucci, to be honest. A Gucci belt. Long time no live. Yeah, I was taking a mental health break, but the regular streams are back. Just at random times though, like this. This is a very random time. Okay, Brooklyn said bamboo and equestrian. Yeah, that's more because the bamboo, like the bamboo bag, the first one they made, that was like Aldo Gucci era, no? So yeah, I guess in accessories there are a few codes there, but in terms of ready to wear, it's quite rare. Wagwan Dolce jeans. Only Gucci code is loafers and bamboo. Yeah, people get too sprung about the history of a luggage house. I think it means, why I'm asking that question is because Gucci doesn't really have that many cemented house codes compared to Balenciaga. It's easier to do your own thing and not be criticized for it. So I think Demna has more leeway, because when he was at Balenciaga, there were all those people that are like, "Oh, Cristobal Balenciaga's rolling in his grave" and all that sort of stuff, right? Which I do find funny. It's like, oh my god, he's making jeans and putting it on a couture runway. How dare he? There are those kind of people, but I don't think with Gucci that would ever be the case. Apart from the Tom Ford head, to just be like, it doesn't look like Tom Ford, therefore it's trash. You have those people too. I don't know why people might be surprised by this. He doesn't really have anything else to work with. Yeah, that's kind of what we were alluding to earlier. Balenciaga's rolling as soon as they revived his house, regardless. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, guys, that's the whole shebang on Demna and Tom Ford. On to the next story, which is something that I've actually covered slightly, like on Instagram and stuff, but I want to revisit it, of course, because why not? Um, so we are, of course, talking about that Miu Miu campaign. The Miu Miu campaign, guys. The one. The one. Now, really, the reason why I actually want to talk about this is I kind of just want to have a discussion in general about a lot of fashion adverts and why they are so bland and why like all of them across the brands, like Gucci, their ad campaign was kind of similar, kind of plain background, no emotion, no storyline, no narrative, kind of thing. It's almost like luxury fashion is fatigued. It's really strange because luxury fashion right now is close to hitting a plateau, and you can see it happening. Like the growth of all these brands has really been slowing down rapidly, and coinciding with that, the creativity of it all is getting less and less interesting. Now I understand why that is, because the more money you make, the more you think you have to, you know, appease a greater audience, a wider customer base, and kind of by default, you just end up making things that are less interesting because that's how execs think. They're always like, yes, but this has to appeal to the Gen Z, but then it also has to appeal to the 50-year-old women that like Miu Miu, and it also has to appeal. And then you just get stuff like this. First of all, I don't know why Kylie Jenner is in this campaign to start with. Kylie is not a Miu Miu girl. A Miu Miu girl is playful, is fun, has a bit more personality, is a bit kind of like, kind of offbeat, but in a very cool way. Um, like this whole like weird glare is just kind of strange. Let me see what they said about the campaign in the description. I'm really curious. An expression of individuality, the Miu Miu Fall Winter 2025 campaign explores femininities beyond conventional definitions, transcending fixed ideas of gender and women's dress. So what? This literally has no narrative. I see how they tried to add narrative to it. What about this campaign shows femininity beyond conventional definitions? So in their mind, it's transcending fixed ideas of gender and women's dress. How? How? Because someone is wearing a blazer. How? What is beyond conventional women's dress in this campaign? Like, what? What are they talking about? What are they talking about? Honestly. Sometimes these captions actually give me the giggles. That is hilarious. Um, so yeah, that's the narrative. So it just has no narrative. It just has no narrative. And I really hope that brands have more identity. When I first got into fashion, why I really fell in love with fashion was every brand was doing something different, and every brand had their own identity in many different ways, their visual identity, their text identity. Fashion has become so homogenous. You guys remember when it was a trend for every single brand to change their font and go to these like weird sans serif fonts? So annoying. I think that was the start of all of these brands kind of becoming bland and having no personality. And now you see it in the way that all of their campaigns kind of all look terrible and they all look bland and there's no narrative, right? So I like that some brands are going back to like their old text. That Burberry is a brand that's starting to use their old text again, which I absolutely love. It's literally, adding some personality to what they're doing. But yeah, it's just a shame. It's just a shame. And Lotte Volkova does a great job. I know she styled that campaign. Love her styling, but there's only so much you can do when the campaign just lacks any sort of narrative or just anything interesting. And apparently this is challenging conventional norms of femininity, apparently. Apparently. Oh gosh. Do you know what's also funny? Do you know what stands out to me about this campaign? This looks like a Prada campaign. So Prada is supposed to be a bit more serious, a bit more grown up, a bit more mature. Miu Miu is supposed to be Prada's fun little sister. Miu Miu is supposed to be more expressive and more girly and more quirky and kind of intellectual and kind of more feminine. And just there's none of that being shown in this campaign. Like zero. Literally zero. I would expect this sort of old ass wallpaper sort of backdrop for a Prada campaign, not for a Miu Miu campaign. It's almost like they don't understand their own like point of view or the brand's point of view, and they completely missed the mark with this one. I mean, I do see it in the casting. Got to give them that. Yeah, ish, ish. Because once again, Kylie Jenner, it's not really. When I think of Miu Miu, I don't think of Kylie Jenner. Did Lotta work on that Balenciaga campaign or not? The kid controversy one. I think I think she did. I can't remember. I think she did though. I think she did. I think she did. I think she did. Yeah, Burberry's new ad is way more fun than me. Yeah, yeah. Burberry has been on a roll. I made a video about it, but Burberry has, yeah, they've been going absolutely crazy recently. They've been going insane, to be very honest with you. Like they've been going wild. In the next stream I do, or maybe in a few streams, we have to talk about the resurgence of Burberry because you guys know, I was here when it was time to critique Burberry and it was time to shit on Burberry. I was having a lot of fun. And I'm going to have just as much fun praising what they're doing because they've kind of found their mojo, to be honest. So yeah, that's Miu Miu, all in the world of Miu Miu. And also in the world of Miu Miu, something that's to me a very, very interesting conversation is actually Miu Miu launching their first fragrance under their L'Oreal license. Now, I'll actually tell you why this is really important, why you should know about this, and all those kind of things. So, let me just put up this article just to give you guys like a visual reference. Yeah, so essentially, last year, Miu Miu signed a licensing agreement with L'Oreal. Now, Miu Miu has had fragrances in the past. This isn't like their first fragrance ever. They've had fragrances in the past, but all of them have not really done well. People haven't really cared. People didn't really take to it. And so it was great to see that they partnered with L'Oreal because, to be very honest, unless you're LVMH, and in some regards Kering, but really only LVMH can do this at this point, or Pooch. There's like a few conglomerates that can like run their own fragrances, but everyone else needs like an Estee Lauder or like a L'Oreal or someone because they just have so many factories and they know the supply chain like the back of their hand and they know the way everything works and they know the industry and they have connections with all the retailers. Like it's so hard to replicate the success of a fragrance without, you know, it being through a licensing agreement with one of these big conglomerates anyway. And so it's very important that Miu Miu, to kind of build on the really good revenue figures that they've been seeing. As we know, Prada and Miu Miu have done really well financially in recent times. The growth has been really good. The sales figures have been great. And the beauty industry is a money maker. It's literally how you print money in the fashion industry. So they're kind of investing heavily into it. And that's why they have a partnership with L'Oreal. L'Oreal will be creating, developing, and distributing their fragrances. And I think it's a very smart expansion. So people were speculating kind of what the rollout of Miu Miu's first fragrance would be, what it would look like. And now we finally have it. It's coming soon, and it's a fragrance by Miu Miu called Mutine. So we shall be watching closely, seeing kind of what the rollout for that fragrance looks like. I'll be watching closely to see how people take to it, if it sells well. Prada, in recent times, and the reason why it's very important to talk about Prada is because obviously it's the sister brand. Prada has a licensing agreement with L'Oreal that has been very successful. Prada, what's that Prada fragrance? that they've launched recently. I actually really like it. Paradox. Yeah, Prada Paradox. That is a really good fragrance. Like, it smells really nice. And it's done so well for them financially. Really, really well. Really well. What's the notes on Fragrantica? I'm not sure the fragrance has actually like come out. I think they just announced it, but I don't know if anyone has actually smelt it. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it's launched yet, but it's they're just teasing it right now. But yeah, Prada Paradox is amazing. It's so good. So they kind of know what they're doing. And I think the group can see from Prada's success with L'Oreal that the money is there and that partnership works, which is why they're kind of bundling Miu Miu into the same thing, which makes a lot of sense. Because I think the licensing deal with Prada Beauty and L'Oreal, the last one was in 2019, and like it's continued since. Wait, speaking on fragrance, my conversation is for sale by the half hour for about. Don't get me started on the Dries Van Noten fragrances. What's your guess on style of fragrance? So, to be honest, let me see. Because I'm trying to see, like, because with Prada, what Prada has been doing, like with Paradox and stuff, it's quite, the fragrance is quite versatile. It's it's kind of feminine, but then it's kind of not, and then it's kind of, you can dress it up and you can dress it down. So I think it's going to be kind of like a Paradox, kind of like a mass appealing smelling thing, like a smell that smells nice to a mass audience, but kind of they're going to make it slightly more girly. Now, how they do that, I don't know. A lot of brands, when they want to make stuff girly, they just make it really sweet and floral. I hope they don't do something as basic as that. I hope there's a bit more nuance to it, but they're going to make it more girly than the Prada fragrances, and they're going to like make them side by side. So it's going to be like, if you want the more mature fragrance from us, then you get the Prada Paradox. If you want the more girly thing, then you get the Miu Miu Mutine. I hope not. I hate floral fragrances. Yeah, I don't know why. I've had this conversation with my female friends that are really into fragrances. They tell me a lot of them. First of all, they wear men's fragrances, and the reason why is they tell me that there's more variety in men's fragrance because a lot of women's fragrance, they're kind of all the same. It's kind of like the formula is vanilla and floral notes. That's kind of just the formula when it comes to women's fragrances. Also, for some weird, strange reason, women's fragrances are significantly more expensive than fragrances marketed towards men. I don't know why that is. Maybe they think that women well, it's true that more women are into like beauty and care about the way they look and probably care about the way they smell. I can imagine that the average woman on the street smells better than the average man, so they feel like they can get away with selling fragrances to women for more. um but it's strange. You would think that everything would just kind of be around the same price. uh Uru Rose by Diptyque is the first floor I have truly enjoyed. Fair enough. I wonder why. That's funny. But yeah, anyway, just kind of wanted to talk about that, and talk about kind of this L'Oreal thing because I think it's really cool. Also, they had like, because they used to have a licensing agreement with Coty. And the fact that they're doing licensing with L'Oreal now is very interesting, like Prada Group I'm talking about, because it's kind of like an elevation. It's kind of like, it kind of sounds mean to say, but L'Oreal is like a step above Coty. Like L'Oreal has the ability to make luxury fragrances in a way that Coty can't, to be honest. Fernando says Mucha is very smart and how she handles both brands. Prada focuses more on mature audience with a small playful side, whereas Miu Miu is the complete opposite and it works in all sectors. Yep, for sure. I usually hate floral fragrances too, but the Fleur de Mal dries down with warmth and musk. Yeah, but that's because Dries Van Noten fragrances are quite complex in the way that they're all made. That's why they all kind of have interesting dry downs. So it's yeah. But when you get, because the problem with Dries is already a niche brand. So even when Dries Van Noten made the line, I don't think he really cared on it being mass appealing. But when you make a fragrance of Prada or Miu Miu, it has to be very mass appealing. So they have to be careful with how many interesting notes they put in there because it can get too niche. And you don't want a fragrance for Miu Miu or Prada to be niche. You want it to be mass appealing so you can make billions, right? But that's why me personally, I'm more into fragrances from brands that are smaller because they tend to make fragrances that are more interesting, if that's what you're into. But I don't think there's anything wrong with mass appealing fragrances too. Like I said, I think Prada Paradox smells amazing. It really, really does, even though it's mass appealing. I appreciate all different fragrances. Even if I wouldn't wear it myself, I can still appreciate it. Fernando says, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little scared of what Demna is going to do at Gucci. It would be nice to see the Tom Ford era return, but what are people to fall in love with him? Was the variety of. Wait, what? But what are people to fall in love with him? Was the variety of. What? Wait, what? I don't think I understand that last part. I don't think I understand it. But anyway, moving on. Next topic, guys. Next topic. I wanted to touch on something quickly because I find it funny. It's like a conversation that's been happening online and it's just been a bit funny. So you guys have probably seen this because I've covered it before. But essentially, everyone is saying that the Hermes tablier bag is the new, or is Hermes's answer to the Rose Margot, which I think is an absolute reach. But let's watch this video because I think this is the most famous video that people have been watching about this topic. And then we can, discuss after. But let's watch this.
Answer to the Rose Margot and the bag that nobody is talking about, but mark my words, every fashion girl is about to want. Meet the tablier bag, a rare, lesser known style that is flying completely under the radar. It's inspired by an apron, and in my opinion, it's giving Alaya Teckle meets the Rose Margot with that same lean and long silhouette and side buckle hardware that subtly reshapes the whole profile.
So, first of all, I'm going to pause there. It doesn't give the Rose Margot. Like, it doesn't give the Rose Margot. I understand it's a good story. It's, this is Hermes's response to the Rose because, there's that whole narrative, right, where people were always saying that this is like the new Birkin. The Rose Margot is the new Birkin for fashion insiders. And the Rose was seen as like the cool thing to wear because it's like, if you have loads of money but you have no style and you're just following trends and what celebrities wear, then you buy a Birkin. But then if you're like more fashion forward and you don't care about everyone knowing what your bag is, then you buy the Margot. So that's kind of always been the thing. The competition for the Margot is always going to be the Birkin, and the shape of the Margot and the Birkin are closer. Obviously, the Birkin is more structured, and the Margot is more like soft, and it's more like you can move it in more different ways. It's less structured than a Birkin. That being said, the tablier does not look like a Margot at all. I understand it for the narrative thing, but it doesn't look like a Margot.
When it comes in classic Hermes shades like gold, noir, and gris misty, with both gold and palladium hardware available. And you can't really see it in many of the photos, but there's actually 4 metal feet at the base of the bag. It's the kind of structured, low volume design that Hermes really only makes once in a while. It's also still one of the very few Hermes bags that's under $5,000. I personally have not been able to stop thinking about it since I first saw it. I particularly love the noir and the palladium hardware, and I also love this particular gold and canvas version. And we've only ever seen this pop up in a few countries. I know this is available in China, in France, but I'm still yet to see it in Australia or the US. Regardless, I am so curious to hear everyone's thoughts. What do we think? This is
Okay, so I'll say what I think. I think it's a stretch. I think it's not their response to a Margot bag because they already have that. First of all, Hermes doesn't need to make anything in response to the row because Hermes is a house that has been around forever. They have made every kind of bag, every style of bag, any kind of bag that the row could make, they probably have something that looks similar to it already in existence. So they don't need to make a new bag as a response to the row. That's just not a thing. Secondly, this tablier bag is just them, it's kind of like a re-edition of one of their old bags. So the tablier bag is, I believe it's referencing their Dalvey bag from 1996, and it's kind of just a modern version of that bag. So I'm surprised he didn't like talk about the history of it and like the fact that yeah, the Tablier Cellier is literally like a re-edition or a modern version of the Dalvey bag in 1996. Um, yeah, so I find that kind of weird to be fair. That being said, I do actually like the design of the bag. I think the design of the bag is cool. I just think this discourse that, oh my God, Hermes is scared of the road. Do you know how much money Hermes makes? Like, what? People think that Hermes is concerned about what the row is doing. Like, seriously. Like, Hermes is so much bigger than the row. It's not even funny. I tried fashion TikTok, but realized it's annoying. Yeah, fashion TikTok is the same place where people just remember the girlies that just found out about white tank tops. That's fashion TikTok. That is literally fashion TikTok. I like the understated elegance of the bag though. I really do like the design of it. I think it's really cool. Being well informed on TikTok, you're asking for too much. I think that so what I've noticed, because as you guys know, I've been posting more on like TikTok and Instagram. So I've been on TikTok and Instagram a lot more. Even when I took a break from streaming, I was like posting short videos. And I've noticed that the kind of content that people make on TikTok is not really about like accuracy, like historical accuracy, or like really explaining things. It's about creating narratives so that you could say, I started this trend. So it's kind of like the person that tried to make white tank tops a thing was trying to do that because everyone wants to kind of create a narrative. So it's like, oh, I'm the white tank top girl. I made everyone wear white tank tops. So this kind of narrative where they're sharing, oh, the Tablier Cellier is like the new Margot, is kind of their way of like being like, I started the trend of people wearing Tablier Celliers. So it's not even, the content is not even about the merit of like covering fashion in a very educational way. It's just about like creating narratives and then being like, yeah, I started the narrative, give me my credit. Where are my brand deals? That's kind of how the platform works. It's really strange, really, really odd. Really, really odd. I saw a talk where they said the Japanese started urban street style. I was done. That's crazy. Especially knowing full well that in Japan, there's so many like American style. I mean, geez, Amatora, anyone? Um, there's actually a whole book about it. Um, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's actually insane. That's insane. But that's TikTok though. People, it's about telling narratives. Also, it's not a lot of their fault because a lot of people that are on TikTok are tend to be young people that don't work in fashion, haven't worked in fashion, haven't done anything in fashion. Like they're not journalists, they're not. So there's like a very strong lack of knowledge. There's a very like low knowledge base, and whatever they see, they just make content. Because the thing about making short form content is that you have to be reactionary. Everything has to be quick. So once you see something, you're like, okay, I'm gonna make a quick video about this, right? So it doesn't leave. So if you don't have a good understanding or knowledge base of fashion history, you can't really tell what's real from what isn't. You just see some page posting about it and then you hop on the bandwagon and make a video. So that person that made that TikTok probably saw it on some archive page and it's like, let me tell you guys how the Japanese started urban street style. And everyone that actually knows anything about urban street style is just looking at this person like, what are you talking about? Dr. G says, stay away, just a bunch of vapid quick facts. Yeah, I just do my coverage on TikTok and Instagram and then I dip after because yeah, it's like a brain fart. Um, but yeah, anyway, guys, that was just kind of my little rant about the whole Hermes versus the Row thing, where people are trying to say that Hermes is doing things in reaction to the Row. They don't need to. Hermes makes way more than the Row probably will ever make in any point in time in its whole history. It's not that deep. Also, the Tablier Sedia looks nothing like a Margot. Like it, the competition for the Margot is the Birkin. Those are the two bags that we pit against each other. The Tablier Celliers are a totally different market. Yeah. Even when people write all those articles, like if I type the Row Margot, see literally first article, how the Rose Margot bag became the ultimate it girl investment. The Row Margot, a Birkin in the making. Like that is when we talk about the Margot, we talk about Birkins. We don't talk about Tablier Celliers. Someone in the chat said it's their fault. Damn. Tough crowd, tough crowd, tough crowd. Okay, something else I want to move on to quickly is Chanel. Of course, we have to talk about Chanel. We always have to talk about Chanel. What's a day without talking about Chanel, eh? So everyone is up in arms, of course, because Chanel have their regular price hikes. They have another one. Now, first of all, Chanel's prices actually do go up every year for people that weren't aware. However, one thing I will say about people's frustrations with Chanel raising their prices, I think the big issue with the way that Chanel raises their prices is the scale, right? Chanel has their prices have more than doubled since 2019 on most of their bags, especially like the iconic flat bags. And in the same time, the average like luxury prices have risen by 50%. But Chanel's have risen by like 105%, like more than it's crazy. Um, so and then on top of that, if the prices were going up but the quality stayed the same, that would be one thing. But the prices are going up and the quality is going down. So it's almost to the point where it's like, what even is the point? And I've seen a lot of people saying that they just like a lot of consumers don't feel like the added cost reflects any sort of like improved quality. And it just doesn't justify the crazy price hikes. Um, and that's why I've seen, and we're probably going to look at the comments in this Reddit. A lot of people are saying that they're just going to buy Hermes now. They're going to stop buying Chanel because that how people are seeing it now is Chanel has gotten so expensive that they're veering on Hermes prices, and Hermes quality is monumentally better than Chanel quality. It's not even close. So it's like, what's the point? Why not just save more money and just get an Hermes bag instead of getting the Chanel bag where they're almost the same price and one is clearly superior in quality. So I'm quite surprised that people are still buying the Chanel bags right now, to be honest, considering the quality. I think the only way to get brands to do better is to vote with your wallets. I don't know why people don't understand this. I don't know how long it's going to take. The only thing that companies care about is money. So if you do something that affects their money, they will be forced to change. So if you want the quality to go up on Chanel bags, all the Chanel girlies need to be like, we're not buying it anymore. And then Chanel's going to be like, well, we need to bring the quality up or we're going to go bust. So I just hope people understand that sooner rather than later. But let's actually look at some of these prices. So you have the someone said, if price is determinant when purchasing, you're not in a financial position to consume. I think it depends. I think it depends. There's things that I can easily afford, but I don't buy it because I just think the quality is horrible. I just don't like the design. Um, so even though like I can afford it, it's just like I still don't think it's worth the price, right? I think it's a very I know that some people are so rich that it doesn't matter. Like if you're a billionaire and you're getting like a 3% return on your investments, you're probably making a minimum of like 30 million every single year until the day you die. So people like that, yes, you can just walk into a Chanel store and just like buy what and not even think about quality or look. But most people are not in that realm. The reason why these brands have become billion-dollar brands is because they started marketing towards the working class and the middle class. When they used to sell to the upper class, which was in the 20th century that these brands used to sell to the upper class, these brands were very tiny brands. They were very niche brands because they were only reserved for the richest people in society. They barely did any ready to wear. Most of it was couture, and then the fragrances were way out of reach because you had like Paul Poiret and Coco Chanel that are making these fragrances all the way back then, and normal people couldn't afford that stuff. Um, and they didn't become big until the Bernard Arnaults of the world, the Francois Pinots came and made it a mass market thing. So these brands, it's in their best interest to know kind of when things get too expensive for the mass market. Because if they don't think about that, then their brands will suffer as a result. But let's see. So the classic wallet on chain has gone up by $150. That's a 4.2% increase. I want to know what is the highest increase by percentage. The small classic handbag has gone from $10,400 to $10,900, a price increase of $500. That's crazy. A $500 increase in a year is wild. Um, yeah, that's insane. um, okay, let me see. Is there any other? Oh, 7.3% increase. Damn. Chanel 22 small handbag, $5,500 to $5,900. And the Chanel 22 handbag has gone up by 6.9%. Ouch. Looking at this chart, if I'm honest, it's mostly the classics they're showing, but Chanel hasn't done any special editions in a while. Yeah, but it's the classics that people buy. The masses that keep buying Chanel will never care to learn. I know. Do you know something that I think about, right? Um oh yeah, I do take into account inflation, by the way. So I'm not sure Yugi if you were listening earlier, but I said that I gave a stat that I found that essentially Chanel has raised their prices more than double for most of their like classic bags. Since 2019, their prices have more than doubled, whereas across the luxury industry, the average prices for bags have gone up by 50% since 2019. So their bags have gone up at double the rate of all the other luxury brands. So it can't just be about inflation, you know what I mean? But anyway, talking about the normal Chanel consumer, I wonder if like the typical Chanel consumer knows about quality or cares. And if they don't, I wonder why. I wonder why, because I've always thought that like if you have a lot of money and you buy into luxury, you're buying into like craftsmanship, right? This is why if you think of like let's talk about menswear. You think of the King of England. Where does he get his shoes made? The King of England will get his shoes made in like Gaziano and Girling and get bespoke shoes by the best shoemakers in the world. Or like he'll go to like John Lobb or George Cleverly. If he wants a suit made, he's going to go to a Savile Row tailor. If he wants a bag made, he's going to go to a very good leather maker. So I find it interesting that there's a culture of people that can afford good craftsmanship, but they don't buy into craftsmanship. They just buy into like vapid things like signaling wealth through garments that aren't even constructed properly, or signaling wealth through garments that, you know, or bags that aren't even made well. Kind of sad, to be honest. It's really, really quite sad. Mathieu Blasi will have a hard time with the price increase. Yeah, that's also something very interesting, right? Because it'll be interesting to see what he does in terms of the bags and how he makes it interesting. Because when we think of the likes of iconic people like Karl Lagerfeld really experimented with all the different materials he could use to make these like special edition Chanel bags, using like towel fabrics to make Chanel bags and like all this crazy stuff. So I'd like to see what Blasi is going to do, especially because he's known for fabric manipulation. That was kind of his MO at Bottega. It's kind of, this looks like denim, but it's actually leather. This looks like a white tank top, but it's actually leather. I'm sure he's going to do some of those like optical illusion-y kind of fabric manipulation things when it comes to accessories at Chanel. And it could be fun depending on how he does it. It could definitely be fun. But I think right now Chanel needs some creativity blown into it at this point, to be honest. It'll be dope if during these live streams you go on different emerging designers or brand socials and we talk about strategy and products, what's working, what doesn't. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mean, if you have any suggestions, I don't mind taking any suggestions at all, to be honest. I don't mind that at all. I heard people saying Chanel needs to be dusted. It does. It's starting to be a bit, Chanel's starting to feel a bit dry. I don't know. It's just a bit dry as a brand. Their runway shows, I can't even remember the last time Chanel had a runway show that I thought was like remotely interesting. Like they're all just so dry. Like they're just so dead. And the clothing has no soul. There's no life. Someone needs to just like, I'm sure if you just if you hit the Chanel office, loads of dust would come out. You know, like when you dust a couch, like loads of dust. Carl was not only a fashion genius, but he's regarded as one of the greats. And Vision EVR failed at keeping the same aesthetic that Carl created. Yeah, I mean, something that we need to understand is that not everyone can be a good creative director. So just because you work for, like, Vision EVR was like Carl's right hand in certain regards. Just because she works for Carl doesn't mean she's Carl. She can't be. Like Karl Lagerfeld is someone who was winning design competitions at a crazy young age. Karl Lagerfeld is someone that was literally in competition with people like Yves Saint Laurent. Like Karl Lagerfeld is someone that did the business at Chloe, like basically went completely against the whole philosophy of what Coco Chanel is and still made Chanel a way more successful brand and made them billions. Like I don't know why you would ever think that Virginia VR could be that just because she worked for the guy that did it. Kind of strange. So yeah, I think some people think that because someone works for someone, they can be that person, but that's just not the case. It's like if I worked for Yves Saint Laurent, I'm not Yves Saint Laurent though. If I worked for Cristobal Balenciaga, I'm not Cristobal Balenciaga though. So if Cristobal Balenciaga, let's just say Cristobal Balenciaga existed in this time, and Cristobal Balenciaga was the editor in chief of Ferragamo, and I was Cristobal Balenciaga's right hand, and then he like passed away, and then I took over. Don't expect it to be as good as when Cristobal Balenciaga was there, because I'm not Cristobal Balenciaga. Just because I worked under him does not make me as good as him. Karl Lagerfeld hated fat people. Yeah, I mean, Karl Lagerfeld hated a lot of things, to be honest. Karl Lagerfeld was really fat. Karl Lagerfeld, it wasn't Karl Lagerfeld the person that said he wanted to lose weight to fit into Eddie Simon's clothing, and like people should lose weight so they can fit into Eddie Simon's clothing. No, Karl Lagerfeld used to say some problematic AF things, like really problematic stuff. He was an iconic hater. That's insane. That's insane. Did you already mention if there are luxury brands that are mainstream but haven't made such massive price increases? Sorry, I just logged on, so I might have missed it, but I'm really curious. No, so every luxury brand increases their prices, which makes sense. Inflation, it makes sense. Like if you work in production and you're making a bag, and then inflation happens, which means that the price of raw materials goes higher, which means in your factory they're like, well, we used to produce this piece of hardware for 50 cents, but now it costs $1 because our suppliers are charging us more. So then the whole supply chain gets more expensive. So it makes sense why prices go up, but some brands just get a bit too big for their boots. That was something that happened with Burberry. Burberry got a bit too big for their boots and like hijacked their whole price system and like tripled and quadrupled the whole thing, and everyone was like, no. And then they brought the prices back down when nothing sold. um, so yeah, certain brands try it, but it doesn't work most of the time. Chanel's actually one of the few brands that has actually gotten away with it, to be honest. Yeah, he got fat just to prove you can get fit. He was the blueprint. Goodness gracious. Carl's war with Yves Saint Laurent was a long one, but Chanel herself wanted Yves Saint Laurent to be her successor. Yeah. Yeah, those couturiers and those designers in the 20th century were just so messy. So messy, and they all used to fight each other. Like all the feuds. You had Karl Lagerfeld versus Yves Saint Laurent. You had um Alexander McQueen versus John Galliano. You had Schiaparelli versus Coco Chanel. Which other rivalries did we have? I'm trying to think. Who else hated each other? There were loads of them. I've just gone blank, but there were quite a lot of people that hated each other. Um, the iconic fashion feuds. Imani's asking if I'm frozen. Am I? Am I frozen? Am I? That's funny. But yeah, so let's see how the market, tackles the whole price increases, and if consumers are going to continue to be okay with it. Let me read some of the comments. I'm curious to see what people are saying in the comments. Let me see. Every time I get an inkling of wanting to buy Chanel, something comes up that stops me. Thank you for this. This is what they do, always make things harder to reach for the average consumer. That, and also more so that I sincerely cannot justify that amount of money for the quality they produce. I can't continue to allow myself to go through cognitive dissonance and pretending they're not literally spitting in my face. Damn, and this is in the r/Chanel Reddit page. These are like Chanel fanatics. I mean, I guess not all of them, because I'm not a Chanel fanatic and I'm literally part of the Reddit. But I'm part of every fashion Reddit for research purposes. You call someone who can afford 11,000 person average user out of their damn minds. Time to stop buying, ladies. Every time you give them money, you're voting with your dollars. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Got to vote with the pockets. To be honest, who benefits from the price increases other than the big wigs of the company? This is ridiculous. Some nice Jaffa Cakes promo here. Shout out to Jaffa Cakes. Okay, additional price increases for seasonal items not listed above. Okay, I mean, that's to be expected. Everything goes up anyway. They're out of their fucking minds. Their sales are down. Nobody's buying the classic anymore. All mini and mini Kellys. I hope that means quality increases too. Yeah, Imaginary Cat, I think you have too much faith in Chanel, to be honest. Let's see. Yeah, people just not liking it at all. Everyone saying time to stop buying. Damn. Quality better go through the roof. Everyone thinks the quality, people need to understand quality never actually goes up. I've never ever a day in my life seen quality go up for like a mass market brand, which is what I'm calling Chanel, because at this point it is a mass market brand. It's just luxury mass market. Um, yeah, unless you're buying couture or whatever. Once they started removing like the gold plating from the hardware, it's not coming back. We're never gonna see gold plating come back, especially because gold is actually really expensive now. So if they did that, I don't even know how expensive the bags would have to be anyway, which is probably why they removed it in the first place. So yeah, that's just never coming back. Literally, it's just not coming back. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about the whole Chanel price increase. But now, guys, we can do some after hours. Ask me any fashion question. I haven't streamed in a long time, so I've got some time for you all to answer some questions, talk about random fashion stuff, have a nice little random fashion chat. David said, let's get loose. That's funny. Okay, how have you been? Okay, I've been great. I've been great. I've just taken a streaming hiatus for my mental health. Just, just relaxing, doing my thing. Obviously, I have a job as well that I've been working a lot on. So, keeping busy, nothing too crazy. Um, your last fashion item purchase. What was my last fashion? Um, because I don't even buy a lot of clothing, so it's definitely going to be like a while ago. What was my last fashion purchase? Actually, it wasn't too long ago. I got some Uggs to like lounge around in. So I got these like, let me show you. They're like Ugg. I think they're called the Ugg Tasman or Tasman Baxter. I think. Um, and then before then, I think what was the last thing I bought before then? Um, yeah, I can't remember. I actually can't. I have to think about it. I have to think about it. The Yugi's like, what? Oh my god, Ugg. No way. It's like, no way. Fashion Roman, where's Uggs? Um, that's funny. Let's see. Yeah, these ones. So these are the ones I got. Well, actually, I got two. So I got this one, and I got like some black versions, like the leather version. But yeah, those are actually the only things I've gotten, to be fair. Yeah, that's all I've gotten. Yeah, I don't think I'd go as far as Juicy Couture, to be honest. I don't think I'm going that far. I just wanted some comfy lounge slippers. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the Juicy Couture thing. And it was so random because I like have a brand deal in the works with UGG, and it was really random. It's like, have they been like, did they track my spending? They're like, we saw that you have the Baxter. Would you like to work with us? Really random. What are your predictions for September? Oof, that's a good question because there are so many debuts happening in September, like loads. I don't even know where to begin with, predictions as far as September. I don't even know where to begin with that one, honestly. It's like let me have a look at the calendar. Let me whip the calendar up quickly. 1 second. Um, 1 sec. Provisional calendar. Yeah, so let's have a look. 1 second. Someone said my next purchase will be a Birkin. I don't. Do you know what it is? I don't think Birkins would suit me. And secondly, I can't even afford a Birkin. But even if I could, I don't even think they would suit me. I don't think it's my kind of bag. Yeah. So yeah, it's just not really. Yeah. But anyway, uh, okay. Past Fashion Week schedule. Let's see. Louis Vuitton, Jews on Nota. I mean, Jews on Nota, I'm looking forward to that because I just like Julian Klausner and what he's been doing at Jews on Nota. And I think it's been absolutely great. I think he's been very consistent there. I always love a Courage. Always love to see what's going on at Courage. I mean, Christian Dior is a big one, right? This will be JW Anderson's first women's wear, ready to wear collection. So that will be cool, especially because, and I'm planning a video for Patreon where I'm going to react to Loic Prigent's video because I want to see if like it's going to change my mind on the collection. So I've deliberately not watched it so I can react to it in like real time for the first time. But a lot of people, the narrative is that he's a better women's wear designer than he is a menswear designer. So expect more from his women's wear than his men's wear. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Moving on. Oh, Tom Ford is a good one. That's going to be Hyder Ackerman's second collection, right? That will be really interesting. That will be really interesting. So that's looking forward to that. Definitely. Christian Vernatz. I love Christian Vernatz. For people that don't know who Christian Vernatz is, he's like a Belgian designer. Really, really cool designs. More like classic in style, but really, really cool. Carvin, Raccoons, go to Scaparelli. Blah, 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 blah. Loewe is another debut. That's going to be interesting. Givenchy, obviously. Sarah Burton, second runway show. Alaya will be cool. Obviously, Margiela. So Margiela is a big one because that will be Glenn Martin's first ready-to-wear show at Margiela. So that will be interesting too. Yeah, Jill Sander will be cool too. So Simone Bellotti, who's the creative director at Jill Sander, I'm a huge fan of his work. I was ranting and raving about his when he was at Bali, especially that last collection he did before he left. at Bali was really good. I was just getting into. I was literally like, wow, I might actually have to start buying Bali. Like I've never bought Bali in my life, but I might have to be a Bali customer. And then he moved to Jill Sander, so so I have to see what he does at Jill because maybe I might be a Jill customer. I might just be. What show you the okay? I'll show you the collection I'm talking about. 1 second. Bali Vogue Runway. Vogue Runway Bali. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it was this collection here. Yeah, it was like so this collection, so how I describe this collection is Calvin Klein better than Calvin Klein. And what I mean is this is like what if this is what like I would want Veronica Leone to do at Calvin Klein basically. But he just did it at Bali. So it's like Calvin Klein better than like current Calvin Klein is more. I was like, this stuff is like clean. Um, so yeah, this was his last collection, and it makes sense he's going at Jill Sander. Like you can draw parallels between what he's doing at Bali and then the fact that Jill Sander is like minimal. Even though every time I say the word minimal, it makes me cringe because minimal is such a like broad term and it kind of boxes those designers in when they all have kind of different aesthetics. When I say them, I mean like Helmut Lang, Jill Sander, Prada. And even Jill Sander herself used to call herself more like a reductionist. Like she reduces clothing into, the most crucial elements is how she sees it, rather than just minimalism for minimalism's sake. But when I say minimalism, just know I'm saying it just for the sake of like, because that's what people say. Like when they refer to it, that's what they mean. But yeah, bear with me. But yeah, this is the baddie collection anyway. Let me just like speed through some of these looks. The footwear is really cool too. The bags were cool. Like all the accessories are really cool. So yeah, this is why I'm really looking forward to what he does at Jill Sander. Like this is exactly why, because I'm like this guy was like had me wanting to buy Bali for a second. You guys in the chat arguing about matcha. What an interesting thing to argue about. Argue about Simone Bellotti Bali or something. Are you expecting any specific trends to pop up? I'm not expecting anything, but if I was to take a guess, I would guess that a lot of people are going to make brands that were once kind of loud more minimal in a way and a bit more streamlined. I think that's definitely going to happen. I think it's just a sign of our times right now. Not everything is an argument. We're having a passionate discussion. My bad. Apologies. Do they have matcha in England? Of course they have matcha in England. It's after hours matcha and Valley parallels each other. Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Also, yes, Jean-Paul Gaultier, that's true. That's that's going to be interesting. Especially because I think when people think of Duron, people think of like tits. You know that like show where it was just like titties and shit. That's what people think about. So yeah, I think Duron's gonna have to. It's gonna be interesting to see what Duron does with that one because right now people just think of the titties when they think of Duron's work. Plastic tits, silicone titties. Yeah, Versace should be interesting too. That's facts. You see what I'm saying? It's so many debut, like it's just endless. Let me go back to the schedule 1 second. It's literally endless. Yeah, Balenciaga, that should be cool. Pio Paolo Piccioli, debut. Celine will be very cool. Second ready to wear show by Michael Ryder. Valentino, obviously Alessandro Michele. Chloe is cool because yeah, I've been loving what's been going on at Chloe. We've covered Chloe a lot on these streams actually, so I don't even want to beat a dead horse. McQueen should be interesting too, for good or bad reasons. Chanel, obviously, that will be like probably the show of the season, the show that everyone is looking to. And then Meryl Rouge would be really cool too because she got the job at Marnie. So a lot of people are going to definitely be looking at what she's doing. Let me look for the Milan schedule quickly. Just to see what brands are on the schedule, see what debuts are on. I know Louise Trotter is definitely showing. That I'm really looking forward to. I'm a big fan of Louise Trotter. So that should be a good one. Why is it so hard to find this Milan Fashion Week schedule? The Paris one is so like easy to find. How strange. Anyway. I'm scared for Gucci. Don't be. Has there ever been a fashion week with this level of shuffle? Never. At least since I've been covering fashion, maybe there was. There might be someone in the chat who's like 60 and be like, no, Ayo, you're wrong. There was a time when 20 creative directors changed. But personally, as far as I know, I've never seen a creative director reshuffling as big as this before. I don't think I've ever seen it. What are the qualities you presuppose would be characteristic of a luxury precedent outside the conglomerate model with a business evaluation that you would rival individual players in the model, i.e. Gucci at Kering? I would tell you I would tell you guys, but I get paid to tell people stuff like that. Like literally in my job right now, that's literally all I do. Without saying too much. Someone who is like 60. No, I didn't mean it in a bad way. Genuinely, I just meant it as I meant it as like someone who's 60 has been into fashion since before I was born. So as much as I've read about fashion and I study fashion and I study fashion in school and I read fashion books, blah blah blah, there's still going to be things that I miss that someone who's 60 that has been following fashion knows. Like literally, I have friends that are I'll give you an example. One of my really good friends, Jennifer, she's like a lot older than me. She has been into fashion like since before I was born, basically. And we went to an exhibition together. It was a Bieber exhibition, and it was so cool going to the exhibition with her because I obviously wasn't alive when Bieber was like a thing. So she was telling me as we were going through the exhibition, oh, these lights that they've put in this exhibition, those are actually how the lights looked in the store. Like it made it a million times more interesting going to the exhibition with her. She was like, oh, so this fabric, this is what like girls are wearing in this place, and like this is what people are wearing in this place. And like we had to save up this amount of money to buy this because Bibba was kind of more accessible, but it was like really good quality for what it was. Like all that context, no matter how much you read, you don't get that context because it's not there in the exhibit. Like they're talking about the clothing and stuff. They don't really talk about everything around it, if that makes sense. And And your honest opinion, which debut are you looking forward to the most overall? What am I looking forward to the most? I think I'm really looking forward to Louise Trotter because I'm just a big fan of hers. Outside of Louise Trotter, I mean, the other shows are happening. Is I'm not necessarily looking forward to them. I'm not like super interested the way that I am with Bottega. I'm definitely interested in Jill Sander because of Simone Bellotti. But the brands like, you know, Dior, what JW Anderson is doing at Dior, or Loewe or Balenciaga, I'm not really as interested in that. Even though we're obviously going to cover all of it in the streams, but I'm not as interested. Fernando, what are you looking forward to the most in the upcoming season? I'm curious. Interesting. 60-year-olds left the chat. I am practicing ageism. It's not ageism. If I say that people that are older than me are wiser, that's literally me saying that people that are older than me have like life experience, which means that they will see things that I don't, or they will know things that I don't. Come on, guys. We're not ageist here. Opinion confirmed ISS Paris Fashion Week is a snooze fest. The thing is, because I know I'm going to Paris Fashion Week in September, also I know I'm going to be exhausted. I am going to be completely exhausted. Yeah, this is true, by the way. I love that Buchanan's getting his flowers for sure. For sure. It's interesting because I remember we talked about it in the streams when that his interview with Show Studio first came out, and then he got viral on TikTok, and now like everyone talks about it, which is great. I saw, let me see if I can bring it up on TikTok. I literally saw a video of him on TikTok literally today. Let me see if I can find it. 1 second. Like quite literally today. Yeah, I found it. Let me show you guys.
Only Black men working in that space.
At the age of 24, you were plucked from obscurity in New York City and flown to Italy to become the first ready-to-wear designer of Bottega Veneta. Please tell me the story.
All of the people that have kind of catapulted me to any kind of job, I met everyone in the club.
What you're saying is we should go out more often.
You should go out more often. To make money during school, I was doing window display for Giorgio Armani. Rodney Patterson was doing window display at Bottega Veneta. He told me that they were looking for a ready-to-wear designer. Bottega Veneta was only accessories at the time, so it was bags and it was shoes and other accessories, but there wasn't apparel. I was a great illustrator, even if I didn't necessarily know how to make the things that I illustrated, but it was a convincing project and it got me hired.
Wow.
And I was flown off to Vicenza, not even Milan at that time.
What was the culture shock like moving to Italy in the 90s coming from New York City?
I flew into the airport, Venice airport, and I was stopped by the police. I had dreadlocks. I probably had a sweatshirt on similar to this one. They were convinced that I had drugs. At that time, I didn't even smoke cigarettes. They strip searched me, did a full cavity search, and they were like, oh, we didn't find anything. You can go. No apologies, no explanation, nothing. And that was my introduction to Italy. A horrible incident, but somehow informed my position within society that I was arriving into. A foreign place that's not used to people that look like you. At that level, I was one of the only Black men working in that space.
So were you the very first Black designer to have one of these massive public-facing jobs?
You know, in the European space, I think so. Oswald Boateng went to Givenchy after me. Lawrence Steele was working inside of Prada at that time, but as the head of ready-to-wear, I think so. I hate that first conversation. It's been very interesting in the last period because a lot of young creatives and people in general that didn't know this story found out through social media. There was no way for it to come to the surface. When this story popped out, it was fucking crazy, man. I never had that kind of, I'm quite a discreet creative. It's never about me as a creative. It's about the work that I do. Shortly after that, I was contacted by Bottega to be in the campaign. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? what do you want from me?
When a new creative director comes onto a house, it's quite rare to look back and pay tribute to the previous creative directors.
I didn't really have contact with the past creative directors of Bottega Veneta. I was intrigued by the work that Daniel did. I loved what Mitu did. I'm so excited about what's to come from Louise. She's the only one that I had real contact with. And when she contacted me, I was like, that's badass. That's cool. It takes confidence and also respect. I think she saw value in that. And I think Bottega Veneta saw value in that story. I think you have to understand the origin before you can tell the future. It's my story, it's my history, and I don't talk about it so often. It was a bit emotional to kind of think back and tell those stories of what that period meant to me. I was honored to be there, and they treated me with respect
That you deserve.
At that level. I was one of the only Black men working in that space.
At the age of 24,
Yeah, that
you
was
plucked
the
from
video
obscurity
I
and you
saw. Also, we can do this now, by the way. Want me to react to Traplaw Ross's video about Virgil Abloh? I just gave it a young dislike. Let's see if that. I don't ever dislike videos, but I was just like, Traplaw Ross calling Virgil Abloh a fashion fraud? That's insane. But we can do it now. We can do it now. Let me react to the video. I haven't actually watched it, so let's see if, because I just have an issue with someone that isn't into fashion or doesn't know fashion well making videos calling someone a fraud or whatever, because it's like, how would you know? Like, how do you even have the context? Like, how would you know that? Also, Norang, thank you so much for the super chat. That's really nice of you. And shout out to you for getting your paycheck today. But yeah, let's watch the video and see what Traplaw Ross says. This will be very interesting.
But Virgil Abloh somehow managed to build. When it comes to high fashion, originality is supposedly everything. But Virgil Abloh somehow managed to build $1 billion fashion brand by doing the complete opposite. Now, don't get me wrong, he's been a pioneering creative. He was the first Black artistic director at Louis Vuitton, the founder of Off-White, and to some, the creative genius that redefined street fashion. But when you take a closer look, the cracks in his rep do start to show. Because beneath the veneer of innovation was a designer who built his empire on borrowed ideas and lazy copy and paste tactics. But what makes it even more sinister is his greatest heist wasn't even a design at all, but it was stealing the dream of his closest friend and mentor, Kanye West. So today, we're going to take a look back into the life of Virgil Abloh and find out how he got away with being one of the biggest fashion frauds of the 21st century. Because once you start peeling back the layers of his career, it becomes painfully obvious that Virgil wasn't really a revolutionary, he was a
biggest fashion fraud of the 21st century is insane. I need to see what he's going to say. I need to see what points he's going to make. Biggest fashion fraud of the 21st century is outrageous. let me see.
Mixer, and not even a subtle one.
Then a year after that, Bernard Arnault could have picked anybody he wanted to be the head of Louis Vuitton. And who was it? And as I got on that flight, I knew I had to go. Because if I didn't go and give Virgil that hug, who was I then? You know, no.
Okay, so I'm going to give like a bit of a hot take because I work in the industry and I see what happens behind the scenes that people might not see. So I understand, even though Kanye West is a crazy person, like he's mad in the head. But when it comes to his frustration with like Virgil Abloh and Louis Vuitton, I understand where he's coming from, and I'll tell you why. I have seen so many instances in the fashion industry where like someone gets someone who was never into fashion really, was never a designer. One person, let me put it this way, one person's dream is to be a creative director at a big fashion brand. And then they have a friend who they try to bring into fashion because they're like, you know, you're kind of into fashion. Let me like introduce you to this person. They kind of get them a job in fashion and all that sort of stuff. And then that person trains them, introduces them to everyone in the industry. And you know that this person's, let's use a random brand as an example. Like this person's dream is, I want to be the creative director of Burberry. Like that's my goal. And this person is training you, and then you basically snake that person to get the creative director role. Now, I'm not even talking about like Kanye West and Virgil, I've seen this exact thing happen for creative director roles at big fashion brands multiple times. Like multiple times where people stab people in the back who have like helped them grow in the industry for years. So I understand the frustration from Ye. Like I fully understand it because I've seen it. I've seen it happen in fashion where like someone that had nothing to do with fashion, you literally brought them in, you introduced them to everyone in the industry, you gave them a leg up, and of all the brands, they decided to be creative director of, you know, the brand that you was your dream. Like Kanye West was literally the Louis Vuitton Don. That's what they used to call him, right? Now, like I'm saying, the examples I'm giving in my head, because I can't tell you exactly, but I've seen this happen for many different creative directors that I won't mention because this thing will get messy really fast. But it happened. So I've come anytime Kanye West shows any frustration or anger towards Virgil Abloh, I understand it. I fully understand where he's coming from. Like I totally get it. I get it.
No one knows that I have been offered the deal by Bernard Arnault. No one knows that the deal was pulled.
That's what Off-White is different. Like, I love counterfeits. It's the best feedback. It's better than like a great review on the vote.
Me and Virgil became rivals. This is the person I spent the most time in my life with my mom, the second most time with Kim, the third most time with Virgil in my entire life.
Mm.
Oh man.
I understand. So okay, let me paint this picture to you, right? So if you had no leg up in fashion and one person basically helped catapult you into mainstream stardom in fashion, and you knew that that person's dream was to be creative director of Louis Vuitton, if you were offered the job, would you take it is the question. Like, would you take it? Would you ask them, oh no, could you hire this person instead? Because this person is what, like, how would you deal with that? Because in the case of Virgil Abloh, he took it, but he took it from someone who he, like, that was Kanye West's dream. That was literally his dream. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Either way, I understand why Kanye is pissed off about it. Like, I think anyone in that position would be like pissed off. So I don't think Kanye West, once again, he is tapped. He's messed in the head. But in this specific issue, I completely understand where he's coming from. And I think that any of his frustration towards Virgil is very valid. But I think, because I don't know what Trap Law Ross is going to say, and I think calling Virgil Abloh the biggest fraud of the 21st century is outrageous, which is why I'm going to listen closely to see what points he makes. But if Trap Law Ross is like a Kanye West fan, because I don't really know too much about Trap Law Ross, maybe you guys in the chat can tell me. This is a crazy thing to use to then call Virgil a fraud just because like he took Kanye West's dream job. I don't know. That's a bit much.
The bathroom, where's Virgil's grave? Okay, so
Shout out to today's sponsor, the Masters of Male Grooming.
Nah, we're not going to talk about how you shave your ball sack. Let's skip.
Born in 1980 to Ghanaian immigrant parents, Virgil grew up in Rockford, Illinois, just a couple hours outside of Chicago. And unlike most successful fashion designers, his academic path had nothing to do with textiles or design. He got a bachelor's in civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison back in 2002, followed by a master's in architecture from the Illinois Institute of Technology. But while studying architecture, Virgil stumbled upon the work of a guy called Rem Koolhaas, an architect who had designed flagship stores for Prada. This seemingly random connection would spark something in Virgil. If this architect could cross over to the world of fashion, why couldn't he? During this time, Virgil was also part of Chicago's creative scene, running with artists, musicians, and designers while dabbling in DJing under the name Flat White. That's exactly how he would cross paths with Kanye West, who at this point was already establishing himself as a rising star in the music scene. Now, this link-up made a lot of sense. For one, Virgil and Ye were two ambitious Chicago kids with massive chips on their shoulders and a shared obsession with high fashion, the brands that would later obsess over them. The story goes that back in 2002, Virgil skipped his final architecture critique, likely the most important presentation of his entire degree, to meet with John Monopoly, Kanye's manager at the time. And what happened next was a bromance so tight that the pair would become practically inseparable. When Kanye went on his first self-imposed exile to Japan after the infamous Taylor Swift incident back in 2009, Virgil was by his side. And when Kanye decided that he needed to learn the fashion industry from the ground up and somehow managed to land an internship at Fendi, he made sure that Virgil got a spot too. And this wasn't the kind of internship that you would expect an already hugely successful rapper to do, something more akin to a viral marketing campaign. No, Ye and Virgil were actual interns who were reportedly paid just $500 a month. Now, to be fair, having done internships myself, usually you don't even get paid. But anyway, when their Fendi internship ended, Kanye would appoint Virgil as creative.
Also, just to answer this, and Ye can be mad if he wants, but he's sorely mistaken if believes he was getting a CD job where there's no volatility and instability. Yeah, so it's two-sided, right? So I can understand Ye's frustration in the sense that he's thinking to himself, well, Virgil stole my dream job. The reality is Virgil didn't steal it. He was offered it. And Kanye West doesn't understand that. Well, let me call him Ye because that's what he's called now. Ye doesn't understand that he's too insane for Bernard Arnault to trust with LV. Like, Ye is like that guy cannot last anywhere. I mean, look at what happened with Adidas. Look at what happened with Gap and the whole Balenciaga thing. Like, everything he does, as far as brilliant as I think Ye is, because I think he is brilliant, he just doesn't have the maturity and he doesn't have the like social awareness to do that kind of job. He just can't do it. So, but then the question becomes, why didn't like, if Virgil Abloh was so adamant on not, you know, taking Ye's dream job, why didn't he say, I will only do it if I can be co-creative director with Kanye, or I won't do it and I'll take the Givenchy job instead? And maybe they would never have hired Virgil at LV. Maybe you would have gone to Givenchy and done the same thing. Like, you know, so it's exactly this. It's also his friend, so it feels extra heavy for Ye. He can't be subjective, even if Virgil didn't backstab him. Yeah, so that's why I keep saying that there's obviously the side of the fact that at the end of the day, he didn't necessarily steal it from Ye, because it wasn't Ye's job to lose. But that being said, I can understand like his frustration. It's valid.
Director of Donda, his creative agency named after his late mother. And from there, Virgil would begin overseeing Kanye's merchandise, album art, and stage design, practically becoming the visual architect behind some of Ye's most iconic moments. He would serve as the art director for Kanye and Jay-Z's Watch the Throne album, earning a Grammy nomination, designing album covers for 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Yeezus, as well as working on stage designs for Kanye's tours. And he was even one of Ye's groomsmen when he married Kim Kardashian. But while Kanye was collaborating with top fashion brands like Louis Vuitton and trying to work his way to becoming their creative director, Virgil was quietly absorbing everything. He was watching how the luxury fashion machine operated, studying its hierarchies, its rules, and most importantly, where those rules could be bent or broken, as well as keeping a very keen eye on Kanye West and his ambitions. But before he could infiltrate the highest circles of European luxury, he would first need to build his own brand. And even that, he would start by screen printing on other people's clothes. Virgil's road to becoming one of the most famous clothing designers in the world started with several short-lived projects that played an important role in developing his style. In 2012, while still working with Kanye, Virgil would launch a clothing brand called Pyrex Vision.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. So a point I always make when it comes to fashion is that, because I think he's going to use the fact that Virgil printed on t-shirts to be like, see, this is why he's a shit designer. I don't think that's valid. And why it's not valid is because most people that work in fashion come from extremely rich families, which means that, you know, like, I mean, geez, when I went to CSM, the kind of families that, like, people living in like the Ritz and shit, like people staying in the Savoy like for the whole year and shit. So it's missing the context of the fact that some people genuinely, to create capital and to build capital, need to do things first, like print on t-shirts, like what they can afford, and then build capital and work their way up from there. This is kind of what Samuel Ross did. until he built a Cold War into like what he wanted it to be, and it was like really complicated and using these insane technical fabrics. But it started with him selling t-shirts because that's how he could build that capital, right? Not everyone is born with a trust fund, and not everyone, you know, has the privilege for their parents to just be like, here's 100 grand, let me invest into your fashion. But like, not everyone has that leeway, just in case he's trying to make that point.
The concept was simple, if not slightly audacious. Buy dead stock Ralph Lauren flannel shirts for $40, screen print the word Pyrex and the number 23 on them, and resell them for an insane $550. He was literally buying someone else's designs and marking them up over 1,000% after adding minimal graphics. Of course, this shortcut-laden business model raised eyebrows, but it also revealed something fundamental about Virgil's approach to design. He wasn't necessarily interested in creating something from scratch or working hard, but he was treating fashion like a DJ treats music, sampling.
See, I knew that's where he was going with it. Just what Tarek said, I called it. That's why I had to point that out. Like, I knew that's where he was going with it. He said that Virgil. So what Traplow Ross just said is categorically wrong. He said because of that, Virgil Abloh's design approach is not wanting to make things from scratch. That's just categorically wrong. That's just so categorically wrong. He didn't have the resources to produce in the way that he wanted. That's why when Off-White was made, it was made in collaboration with the New Guards group guys, like the Claudio Antoniolis of the world and stuff, right? And they were the guys who like had the production know-how, and they had the factories in Italy, and that's when he could start producing things to the level that he wanted, and that's when he was making stuff from scratch. So what Traplow Ross said is categorically wrong about, oh, his design philosophy is not making things from scratch because he printed on t-shirts, like on Champion hoodies and stuff. That's just insane.
Mix and recontextualizing existing elements without really adding too much of his own creativity, whilst also realizing that the success of clothing brands had actually very little to do with the clothes themselves and everything to do with the brand that was built around the clothing. Pyrex's vision would eventually shutter within a year, almost as quickly as it appeared, but Virgil would always have more than one project going at the same time, and at this point, he had become the part of a DJ and art collective known as Bean Trill, made up of members like Heron Preston, Florencia Galazza, Justin Saunders, Matthew Williams, and Virgil himself, and a mysterious member named simply YWP, which was rumored to have been none other than Kanye West himself, or Yeezy World Peace, an honorary member of the collective.
Shit for y'all to go to work to, ride to, listen to when y'all working out, when y'all, whatever y'all doing, to provide a soundtrack for this shit that's gonna come out. We're gonna keep on doing this shit over and over and over, making shit from our core, from our cut, and then with the creative director of Matt Williams and Virgil Abloh and the whole team, Don C, Ivan, all the Big Trill family, R&B people.
While Bean Trill would firstly focus mainly on music, they would soon begin also making clothing, and would quickly rise to
Wait, did Kanye West pay for this? Yeah, exactly. Did he pay for this or something? What is going on?
Become one of the most coveted streetwear brands around 2013, becoming known for their simple but bold graphics and internet-inspired aesthetics like the use of hashtags, and more than anything, their connections with many of the most popular artists at the time who would use and promote the brand, like Drake, Justin Bieber, and Chief Keef, who would famously even get his very own Free Keef t-shirt from the brand during his short stint in jail in 2013.
I want to see how he's going to spin this, because it's just, all they were doing was making Bean Trill merch, which is normal. If you're a DJ or you're a music artist, everywhere you perform to make more money, you just make merch. If he's trying to use that as a pivot to say this is his design philosophy, he's not a real designer, that's a very terrible point. But let's see if he does that.
13. which was even rocked by numerous fellow artists like Travis Scott, Soulja Boy, A$AP Ferg, and even Rihanna. And the Bean Trill Collective would even direct Keith's 2013 music video for the song All Time, which was filmed almost entirely in front of a green screen and then filled with bold and psychedelic graphics, in many ways pioneering the style that's now a staple in underground rap music videos. But in the end, just like Pyrex Vision, Bean Trill's time as one of the most hyped about streetwear brands was relatively short, and the beginning of the end would start already in mid-2013, as the owners would seemingly decide to cash out, ditching the brand's former image as rare and expensive by striking a deal with PacSun, one of the largest retail chains in America focused on youth apparel, whilst the last nails in the coffin were surely collabs like these with Coca-Cola and Budweiser that followed. But once again at this point, Virgil had already left the ship to start another project, and this time he would take it further than anybody could have ever possibly imagined. This project, of course, being the brand Off-White. Launched in 2013, Off-White would take Virgil's sampling philosophy to new heights, or new lows depending on your perspective, and it would start with the very logo and visual identity of the brand itself. On the left,
he didn't even talk about why Off-White was made or why it's called Off-White, and the fact that he had a legal battle with Pyrex. So he had to rebrand his brand, and at the same time, he had met the New Guards Group guys, so they kind of built Off-White together, and that's why they were doing production. He missed out a very key part of the story there. Like, he went on this like weird tangent about Bin Trill merch and missed out on actually the most important part of why Pyrex transitioned into Off-White.
here is the signage from Glasgow Airport, designed in the late 1960s, featuring diagonal stripes and an arrow motif. And on the right is Virgil's Off-White signature branding. Now, the similarities are, to put it mildly, striking. But even beyond this, fashion sleuths have pinpointed other elements of Off-White's visual identity that appear to be lifted from existing sources, right from the typefaces down to the graphic layouts. When asked about his copy and paste antics, Virgil would frequently defend his approach by comparing it to Duchamp's ready-mades and Andy Warhol's pop art. However, there's arguably a significant difference between Warhol openly transforming Campbell's soup cans into an obvious artistic commentary, and Virgil allegedly repackaging existing designs and quietly selling them as original creations. But whatever the case, with Off-White gaining momentum, Virgil was no longer Kanye's behind-the-scenes collaborator, he was now a competitor. And he was
So I don't want to be that guy, but I can't lie. Sometimes the way that people get onto Virgil about the fact that, oh, Virgil copies stuff, it comes across like racism. And the reason why it comes across like racism is because why is it him that people bang on about, oh, he copied this, he copied that? Do you know how many designers I can tell you that everyone loves have lifted things directly from places consistently? Like literally consistently. Even, and I'm a fan of Walter Van Beirendonck. Walter Van Beirendonck went on this like big tirade about how Virgil Abloh copied him, but Walter Van Beirendonck literally copies work from like Malian African artists. So once again, just because people like Westerners don't know the reference of the Malian artist, that's why they don't accuse Walter Van Beirendonck of copying. But he just takes motifs from like Mali and just prints it on t-shirts. That's what Walter Van Beirendonck was doing. So like sometimes this whole like, oh, Walter copy, when they're like Virgil copy, I'm like, bro, tell me who your favorite designer is, and I can literally point out to you all the stuff that they copy. So I don't know, it's just a bit strange. I don't know, it's just a bit, I've always felt there's an air of like racism. It's like, and the thing about racism is like sometimes when people are racist, they don't know that they're doing it, or it's subconscious. It's like so baked into their being, they don't know that they're doing it. They just, black person, let's destroy him. All he does is copy. They can't help it.
positioning himself for the biggest opportunity of his career, one that would cement his place in the fashion industry while simultaneously fracturing his decade-long friendship with the man who gave him his start. In 2018, Virgil was appointed men's artistic director at Louis Vuitton, making him the first black designer to hold such a position at the French luxury house. For anyone who'd been following the trajectories of both Virgil and Kanye, this announcement landed like a bomb, because this wasn't just any job, this was the job that Kanye had desperately been chasing for years. He was, after all, named the Louis Vuitton Don. All the way back in 2009, Kanye had made his first major deal with Louis Vuitton when he had designed a shoe collection for the brand. I remember having a fake pair.
Why is this? I thought the videos. So I thought this video by Chaplow Ross, yeah, like he exactly what Imani was like. So much context is missing. I thought he was going to talk about. I thought he was just going to call into question what everyone basically tries to say, which is like, oh, Virgil copied this, copied that. The whole narrative of the video from beginning to end is about Virgil basically doing what Kanye West wanted to do, and it's all based on Kanye West. Like what what is this video?
These back when I was in school, it was popping. And in 2016, Ye was supposed to finally take over as the company's creative director, replacing Kim Jones.
Like this video is literally a Ye video. It's not even about Virgil Abloh, no joke, because he didn't talk about Pyrex and the lawsuit, and he didn't talk about why they had to rebrand to offer like key things about the brand and the story of Virgil Abloh and like his brand. He's leaving all of that out in favor of just trying to like tie in everywhere where like Ye was involved. Like, what kind of weird account of events is this? Like,
the same designer Ye had put on years earlier, back when he had hired him to work on his Pastel label. It would have been a full circle moment, and even Kim himself reportedly recommended Ye for the job, and word was Louis Vuitton had agreed the position was actually his.
Bernard Arnault offered me a deal after the Yeezy Season 1 show to support the Kanye West brand, because we had 4 billion impressions, and it was the biggest fashion show of all time, like bigger than Victoria's Secret, bigger than Chanel. So Bernard Arnault had a meeting with me and looked me eye to eye and shook my hand and said, I'm going to do the Kanye West line.
This was happening during a time when Kanye's Yeezy brand with Adidas was already exploding in popularity, revolutionizing both the sneaker market and Ye's bank account. His shoes were selling out instantly, reselling for thousands, and turning him into one of the most...
Okay, at this point, we know the narrative of the video is just a hit piece, and it's just because the title of the video is that Virgil Abloh is a fashion fraud. Why are we talking about Kanye West and what he did with Adidas? Like, where's the correlation there?
Successful designer entrepreneurs in the fashion industry. But despite building what would eventually become a billion-dollar empire with Yeezy, Kanye still craved legitimacy from the fashion's old guard. No amount of commercial success seemed to satisfy his desire for acceptance from the elite fashion world that had long dismissed him. But then, the 2016 breakdown happened. Unfortunately for Ye, this now infamous public meltdown spooked LV execs so badly that they would end up hitting the brakes. Kim Jones was asked to stay on board.
Exactly. So once again, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, as much as like I said, Ye's frustration is valid because Virgil Abloh is his friend, blah, 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 but it wasn't his job to lose, because he didn't have the job in the first place. Like, he was the one that he always sabotages his own opportunities. It's what he does. He's not very socially aware. He's not emotionally intelligent. He's mentally unhinged. So he can't keep a job. And Bernard Arnault is not going to entrust one of his most important brands with someone who is mentally deranged. Like, why would Bernard Arnault do that? So I don't know what point Chaplow Ross is trying to make.
A little longer, and Ye's dream was quietly put on ice. But by 2018, LV was finally ready to make a decision. But by then, things had changed. Behind closed doors, they decided that Ye was too unstable to represent the brand, and instead, they handed the role to his closest protege, Virgil, a man who, by all accounts, was one of Kanye's closest friends, someone who had seemingly been quietly watching, learning, and maybe even plotting all along. And just when you think it couldn't get more cold-blooded, Virgil would hit Kanye with a call, allegedly just a few minutes before the news broke online, to let him know he had just taken the job that Kanye had spent almost 2 decades chasing. And then, when Virgil finally made his debut for Louis Vuitton at Paris Fashion Week, the crowd was psyched. But in the middle of all the hype, there was Kanye, front row, tears streaming down his face as he embraced his former protege at the end of the runway. Most people at the time probably saw this as a mentor overcome with pride at his student's success. But was Ye crying tears of joy, or was he mourning the dream that had secretly been snatched from him? The dark truth, like most things with Kanye, is probably all of the above. In that moment,
once again, I keep saying it. I understand Ye's frustration, although if Kanye was a bit more emotionally intelligent, he should understand that, okay, cool, I helped Virgil Abloh come into the industry. Yes, the Louis Vuitton job was my dream. However, I blew it myself because I was the front runner for the job. And then I went on a crazy rant, and Bernard Arnault was like, I don't want anything to do with this guy. So that's your fault. You caused that. You can't be mad at someone else when you did that to yourself, though. Like, let's be for real. Like, let's actually be for real.
he seemed to embody the conflict at the core of their relationship, formed from years of friendship and camaraderie, but also fierce competition, and ultimately jealousy and betrayal, as Kanye himself would later admit. At Louis Vuitton, it was impossible to deny Virgil's commercial impact. For one, his pieces were flying off the shelves fast, but also, Virgil's history of combining streetwear and high fashion helped LV reach a younger demographic while maintaining its prestige positioning. And while Ye's Yeezy shoes with Adidas were undeniably crushing it at the time, his broader fashion ambitions, particularly with the Yeezy clothing, were still hitting roadblocks after LV curved him and embraced Virgil instead. However, as time went on, it became clear that even after reaching the pinnacle of success, Virgil never grew out of his copy and paste habits, and as we'll soon see, it was only a matter of time before this habit would eventually catch the attention and ire of other fashion creators. The first major heat Virgil caught for alleged plagiarism came shortly after his debut runway collection with Louis Vuitton, but the allegations concerned his own brand Off-White. In July 2018, Norwegian sportswear brand Helly Hansen sued Off-White for jacking their trademark diagonal stripe pattern that they had been using for 40 years, demanding Off-White destroy all products with those stripes and pay them damages.
See, this is what I mean, like a diagonal stripe pattern. Really? Really? A diagonal stripe pattern. Are we being serious? And this is the thing about fashion. Like, something that is quite annoying is when people think that they originate really basic things. Like, there's people that I could make a design tomorrow that's like really simple. Like, it's a normal shirt, but maybe the collar is extended, and people will be like, he copied me, and do like a whole hit piece, and everyone's going to be like, oh, Fashion Roadman copies people. Bro, it's an extended collar. I've never seen your work before. It's a very easy idea to come up with. That's why so many people come up with that idea. It's an extended collar. Same thing. Diagonal stripes. Like, what?
Some Virgil fans tried to dismiss the lawsuit, pointing out that diagonal stripes are common in fashion, but this missed the point entirely. The issue wasn't just about
how did it miss the point? Let's see how he says it misses the point. Let's see. Chapler. He's already. This video is already horrible because there's so many gaps in information. All he's talked about is Ye for most of it. But let's see what he says.
Stripes. It was about Virgil's habit of constantly lifting existing designs with minimal changes and passing them off as a revolutionary. So while his supporters would claim his...
How did he pass them off as a revolution? What is this guy talking about? This Chaplow Ross guy is clueless. What is this guy talking about? Wait.
Genius was in repackaging ideas with an unmatched intensity. It was impossible to shake off the fact that this was laziness at best and theft at worst. Because if you strip away the buzzwords and industry jargon like repackaging and recontextualization, what you're left with is a designer who built his career largely on other people's ideas. Even as the controversies piled up though, Virgil's carefully crafted persona as a trailblazer of fashion helped define...
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And the reason why it's so dumb is because Virgil Abloh's best collections, especially at Louis Vuitton, are like his tourist versus purist collections, which looks at like what it's like to be an outsider in a fashion world and kind of how you bring a different perspective into fashion and what that does. It also talks about like his journey as an immigrant from Ghana. Like at Louis Vuitton, his collections were personal stories about his life. This is the thing. This is how I know like people like this are just dumb. All the Virgil copied this, Virgil copied that. there aren't actually that many allegations. It's just people talk about it all the time because they want to discredit Virgil, and that's why I think it has an air of like racism, because I think people don't go to these lengths to try and discredit other designers that I think copy a lot. I just know the references because I'm African, so I can always tell when designers are using a lot of African work, right? Because that's my culture. So it's dumb because Virgil Abloh is, when people are like, Virgil Abloh is a really good designer, Virgil Abloh is really cool, is when we were looking at his work at LV, which all those stories were personal stories about his childhood and about what it's like to be an outsider in fashion and what it's like to be from an immigrant family from Ghana. And then he was mixing Ghanaian prints and like kente cloths with European silhouette. Like, I don't know what this Chaplow Ross guy is talking about. Like, he's absolutely clueless.
Reflect the criticism, but for those paying attention, a troubling pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, as later that same year, Virgil would also be accused of copying an earlier off-white design from the artist Luco Fontana, the inventor of an art movement known as spatialism, who Virgil admitted to being a fan of. The following year, in 2019, Virgil would allegedly steal from a young artist named Punk Zek, with Punk's mother, Michelle Ellie, calling out Virgil for copying her son's designs after they had met at his Paris presentation. But Virgil would brush off these accusations by framing his approach to design as part of streetwear's rich tradition of sampling and remixing. To some, this defense was basically a masterclass in having your cake and eating it too, because unlike music, where samplers pay for clearance, or fine art, where appropriation is explicitly acknowledged as commentary, Virgil seemed to want it both ways, taking freely from others while building up his reputation as an innovative designer, and surprisingly, the fashion industry still ate it up. However, about a year later, Virgil would find himself knee-deep in another controversy, this time with...
So why, and he's talking about, oh, I didn't even know he was going to mention Walter van Beirendonck. I've already covered the Walter van Beirendonck thing, so I don't need to talk about it. But why this doesn't make any sense is the people that are really big fans of Virgil Abloh's work, like me, no one cared. Like, Virgil Abloh was not using stripes to pass himself off as some fashion genius. And if Chaplow Ross knew anything about fashion, he would know that. No one cares about some diagonal stripes. Like, when people remember Virgil Abloh's work, we talk about tourist versus purist. We don't talk about some diagonal stripes. Like, no one cares about that. He's not using those dead-ass designs to to pass himself off as some fashion genius. I don't know what this guy's talking about.
Belgian designer Walter van Beirendonck, who again would straight up call out Virgil for directly copying patterns and designs from his fall 2016 collection, and this time using them in his Louis Vuitton Spring-Summer 21 collection. Both designs featured men's suits in primary colors with figure lines attached to the front of the jackets. Van Beirendonck would blast Virgil in the Belgian media, essentially calling him a talentless hack who couldn't create an original design to save his life. He would go even further as throwing a jab on Instagram with an outfit that simply read, "I hate copycats." In response, Virgil would claim his Louis Vuitton collection was inspired by the brand's own 2005 menswear show under Marc Jacobs, not Van Beirendonck's work. But fashion insiders...
This guy's about to say something so stupid, but go on.
Quickly noted that the similarities to Van Beirendonck's designs were far more striking to any connection to LV's archive. The controversies would continue in 2021 when Walker Wear, a streetwear brand that had been dressing hip-hop royalty since the early 90s, would file another lawsuit against Off-White for allegedly plagiarizing their logo. According to the lawsuit, Virgil replicated a jacket design that they'd been using for almost 30 years and slapped a price tag of over $2,000 onto it. It seemed that there was an all too familiar pattern with Virgil's work, often feeling like a sophisticated...
So, one thing that people also need to understand, especially in the US, where it's not like Europe where you can't really sue people for things, there's also money to be made. So you have an incentive to try and sue Virgil Abloh or Louis Vuitton or Off-White if there's any remote similarity to any of your designs, because there is money to be made. There is literally a financial incentive to do that, to create a narrative that, oh, he copied me, when these are really, really basic designs that like anyone could come up with. A lot of them, like 2 W's, diagonal stripes. There's literally a financial incentive for people to do that.
game of spot the reference. But interestingly, when most designers get caught copying like this, they hide, deny the allegations, or even lawyer up. But Virgil didn't do any of that. Instead, he developed an entire philosophy around appropriation, essentially turning plagiarism into a whole design style. He called it the 3% rule, the idea that you only need to change something by 3% to make it your own.
Then I have my sort of like 3% approach. Right now, I'm only.
This is nasty work because the way he's painting it is like everything that Virgil did. He just changed everything by 3%. I've literally just talked about all his runway shows at Louis Vuitton, where, first of all, for people that don't know, Virgil Abloh had a website called Canary Yellow. Canary Yellow, he used to post the show notes and all the information to every single runway show that he did, especially at Louis Vuitton. They were long, like each show note would be like 50 plus pages long, where he explains every single look and the inspiration and what he was thinking of when he designed it, like look by look. How can you have that resource, know where all his inspirations are coming from, and still make a dumb video like this? I don't get that.
Interested in editing something 3% from its original form. I'm basically tired. I might be too old, but
Virgil would also compare himself to a DJ sampling music or a hip-hop producer chopping up old records, repeatedly defending his methods by saying his strength was in selection and recontextualization rather than pure creation. Now, this approach might work fine for an art school thesis, but when you're charging over $2,000 for a hoodie with someone else's design elements, things can get murky real fast. But just like with the time of Pyrex Vision, Virgil just didn't seem to care. And while his design fraud game was a hotly debated topic on the fashion scene for years, Ye's silence was deafening, at least until Virgil tragically lost his battle to cancer in 2021, at which point Kanye would finally break his silence, with all that hurt and bitterness that he kept inside eventually exploding out into the public eye. Years following Virgil's Louis Vuitton appointment, Kanye would maintain a public front of support for his former mentee. In fact, Kanye would consistently express pride in seeing someone from his circle achieve what had once seemed impossible for black designers, even though he was hurt about losing his creative director as well as his Louis Vuitton deal.
So the hurtful part was they agreed to support my clothing, and guess who was one of my designers? Virgil. Then they didn't do the deal.
They would also both go from success.
Yeah, but oh, the night of this video is so stupid. Yeah, but they didn't do the deal because Ye went on one of his stupid rants, and Bernard Arnault was like, I want nothing to do with this crazy ass mentally unhinged man. That's why they didn't do the deal. He's making it seem like Virgil Abloh is the cause of all his issues when he's actually the cause of his own issues. Because Ye was a bigger name than Virgil and will always be a bigger name than Virgil. And he was always in the running seat for all these jobs before Virgil. Like before Virgil got the CD role at LV, Ye was the leading candidate for the role. He messed it up himself, saying crazy shit to the point where Bernard Arnault was like, I don't want anything to do with this guy. So him trying to play the victim now, like, oh, he took my dream from me. Like I said earlier, I understand the frustration because he's human. I can understand being frustrated, but he also has to have the emotional intelligence to understand that it's his fault too. You can't absolve yourself of any responsibility. That's insane.
To success, Virgil with Off-White and Louis Vuitton, and Kanye with his Yeezy empire with Adidas, which would end up making him a billionaire in 2020. The same year, he would also strike a very lucrative deal with Gap, finally giving him the kind of creative leadership in fashion that he was promised years earlier.
And then what happened at Gap? What happened? What happened at Gap? What happened? Let's see if Chaplow Ross says what happened about Gap.
Keep it real, Gap ain't no Louis Vuitton. Then, after Virgil would pass away in November 2021, it would take even a year for Kanye's world to begin crumbling too, as his Twitter rants would bring an end to his partnerships with Adidas and Gap, and whatever was going on with Kanye...
There we go. So you're smart enough to understand that happened at Adidas and Gap. So why are you trying to push a narrative that Virgil Abloh took Ye's stuff at LV when Ye took his own job away from himself?
It would seemingly either change his feelings towards his old friend or begin to finally bring out his true feelings towards Virgil that he had been bottling up all these years. And this would culminate in Ye's recent outbursts, as he would take to X on multiple occasions to air out his frustrations, saying, Virgil let me down, and simply F Virgil. He would go on to drop the now infamous betrayal list where he put...
Yeah, that was nasty. After Virgil's passing, to say F Virgil is wild. Because once again, Ye had the role. He was the front runner for the role. He was the person that was going around saying crazy shit and turned everyone off him. Because Ye is not a likable person. He's not a likable character. That's why everywhere he goes, shit goes wrong. Everywhere he goes, shit goes wrong. Everywhere. Whether that's at Gap, whether that's at Adidas, whether that's at LVMH, everywhere he goes, people hate him. The only common denominator there is Ye, no one else. So to say F Virgil to me is insane, especially because he's passed away. And you're saying it when he can't defend himself. He didn't say that when Virgil Abloh was alive. So I don't respect that at all. But it's insane to be blaming Virgil when it's his own fault. That's insane.
Everyone from his own kids to former collaborators on blast, and sitting right at the very top of that list was Virgil's name. These outbursts would also continue on streams that Ye would do too. In another stream, the diss would get even darker.
Niggas who go against me be dead, bro. Niggas who steal from me, bro. Look at Virgil, he dead, bro. You steal from me and try to take the king position, be dead, bro. Oh, man.
Now he's basically celebrating at Virgil's party. Yeah, but anyway, I already said it earlier in the video. Like, Ye is a mentally deranged sicko, literally.
And I gotta use the bathroom. Where's Virgil's grave? Okay, so,
That's not funny. I don't know why they're laughing.
Virgil, like, changed their lives.
There's literally nothing funny about that. I don't know why anyone in this room is laughing about that. There's absolutely nothing funny about making fun of someone that's dead. There's literally nothing funny about that.
Gonna come after you, so that means no one's coming after you.
And when asked about it in interviews, Kanye would double down with the story that we've now heard multiple times. The Louis Vuitton position was supposed to be his, that Virgil knew it, and just to twist the knife, that he went behind his back anyway. Now, whether Virgil actually betrayed Kanye maliciously or simply accepted an opportunity that had been handed to him is something that he took to the grave. But what's clear is that his decision to accept the job that had once been...
No, it's not something he... this guy... How is it something that he took to the grave? The information is literally in the same video. Earlier on in this video, Traplow Ross stated that he was a front runner for the LV role, but then he went on a crazy rant that turned Bernard Arnault off to him having the role. Now he's saying whether he simply took the opportunity that he was handed or he snaked Kanye West, he took to the grave. Bro he can't even stay on one point in a 20-minute video. He can't even be consistent with his own points in a 20-minute video.
Kanye's dream left wounds that never healed. So where does this leave Virgil's legacy? Was he a visionary who democratized fashion and broke barriers?
And this too, very true. Also interesting how he brings up all these allegations and never follows up on what happened to them. They were dismissed in court. And also the fact that, the point I brought up, that people literally have a financial incentive to, sue him because there's money to be made. Like, how can you not mention that in this situation?
Areas for black designers, or was he an opportunistic copycat who built an empire off the back of other people's ideas? The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. Perhaps more than a revolutionary designer, Virgil was a master marketer who had a deep understanding.
The truth isn't somewhere in between. It's not somewhere in between.
Of branding as a foundational element of fashion. He realized from early on that the power of fashion is all about the story that the clothes are able to tell. Therefore, he wasn't just designing clothes, but building cultural movements. And that approach took him very far, to the point that there's no denying Virgil's impact on the fashion industry. He not only helped break down the artificial barrier between streetwear and luxury, but he became arguably one of the most well-known contemporary fashion designers. And as the first black designer to lead a major European luxury house, he kicked down doors that had long been closed to people who looked like him. For many young designers of color, seeing Virgil at the helm of Louis Vuitton Vuitton was revolutionary. It was proof that they too could aspire to fashion's highest echelons, but there's also no denying the questions about his originality and integrity. The long trail of stolen design elements is too substantial to ignore, and his 3% rule raises some serious ethical questions about creative ownership in an industry built on original ideas.
The 3% rule is not even like what he referred to when he was talking about the 3% rule is literally not even like 20% of the work he produced, because the 3% rule didn't really apply to anything that he did on the runway. Funny enough, when he was talking about the 3% rule was when he was talking about his Nike collaboration, the 10. That's when he was talking about, you know, just changing something slightly can make you like create a totally different outcome. That's why he was talking about the 3% rule a lot. So him trying to set it up like, you know, the 3% rule really calls into question the idea of ownership and what that means is so stupid, because that wasn't really a philosophy that, you know, was what he used for most of his work. Like, that's so dumb. He's trying to act like the 3% rule is what Virgil applied to all of his work when it literally wasn't even applied to like 20% of what he did. That's so dumb. I knew it was going to be a bad video anyway, because Chapler Ross obviously doesn't know anything about fashion, obviously. But I didn't know it would be this bad, though. This is bad. Like, he missed key information. He stayed on a very specific narrative. Basically, the narrative he wanted to paint was Virgil Abloh is a fraud because he copies people, he uses the 3% rule, and he snaked Ye. That's basically the summary of this video. That's like the narrative he wanted to paint.
And perhaps even worse, he managed to convince young designers that ripping off other people's designs was not just acceptable, but downright clever.
Everyone talks about Virgil. He has that 4% rule. You see something you like, you change it 4%.
So see, this is the problem, right? I like how he built the narrative, but it's still a bad video. So what he's done here, like I've already told you, that Virgil, when he talked about the 3% rule, was that, you know, he was talking about Nike the 10 and stuff like that, right? The 3% rule is not a philosophy that Virgil Abloh actually really used in his work. Majority of his work, if you actually look at it, had nothing to do with the 3% rule. The issue now is that some of these streetwear kids who don't have any design talent and all think that you can just like print on blank tees and become a millionaire, all of them took that 3% rule thing as Bible and they started approaching it. But that's because they don't have good comprehension skills. And Virgil Abloh is actually a very intelligent person. He speaks intelligently. So if you have a low IQ, you might struggle to understand like what Virgil Abloh is saying, especially because of the way he talks, the kind of vocabulary that he uses. So of course, some of these kids will be like, "Yeah, Virgil Abloh said the 3% rule. You just change it to 3%, and then you're a design." Of course, there'll be people that say that, but that has nothing to do with Virgil Abloh, and it doesn't really say anything about his own design philosophy. So it's a nice try, but all you're highlighting is just kids that don't do research. That's all it is.
And you live by that? I live by that. I'm for Virgil, but I think I'm gonna do it better than Virgil because they call it a 2% rule. I call it take that shit.
So yeah, some might say branding him a straight up fraud is harsh, but there's no doubt that he played fast and loose.
You see what I'm saying? You have this guy being like, I call it take that shit. Meanwhile, Virgil Abloh was making collections about immigration and Ghanaian heritage. like, like what? What are we actually doing here? Like, what are we actually doing? Inconsistency and repetition are key features of artificial intelligence generated content. Yeah, it might be AI content because, like I said, he contradicted himself. So at one point he said whether Virgil Abloh took a job that he was handed or he snaked Kanye West, we don't know. He took it to the grave. That's what Trapdoor Ross said. But earlier, there was literally a point where he said Kanye West was the front runner for the job, but after ranting, turned fashion people off. Yeah. Like, bro. Like, what? That Louis Vuitton collection about that Miles Davis poem was 2% rule. What is Ross yapping about? I don't know what this guy's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about. He follows the same formula as ghost footage YouTubers. Post obviously fake shit, then ask, is it a real ghost or is it a hoax? And then follow up by, you decide. Plausible deniability, damage is done. Like, what even is this video? Wait, 1 second. Let me see what some of the comments are. Yeah, that's a immediate dislike. See, it's just low IQ on top of low IQ. Here's another one. Who remembers? Look at this comment. Who remembers when Black Twitter coined the term "I'ma keep it 2 virgins with you" because after backlash of condemning George Floyd uprisings, he only donated $50. You see, another Dumbo. So the context of that thing, right, was Virgil Abloh, when George Floyd happened, donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Black Lives Matter, right? He then started a campaign where he donated $50 so that people could match it. So he was trying to promote people to match that donation, which is why it obviously had to be something that isn't inaccessible for most people. So in his own time, he donated hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then with the campaign for him wanting to match stuff, he was like, okay, I'm donating $50. Everyone matched the donation. And a bunch of absolute Dumbo airheads were like, Virgil Abloh needs to be cancelled. He only donated $50. He's a rich guy. You know, why would he be so rich and only donate $50? And he's like, it's a campaign. I'm telling people to match the donation. I donated hundreds of thousands of dollars myself. And people are like, nah, keep it 2 Virgils. And I was just like, fuck. Why are people just so dumb? Like, it's just so frustrating. It's honestly so, like, people just don't read. They just don't read. They don't want to understand anything. They just want to just jump on a bandwagon and be stupid. It's so annoying. It's honestly so annoying. It's so annoying. It was literally like he was challenging people to match the donation. Like, it's so dumb. And now you have someone commenting this. Like, and then you have another person saying that Virgil was drop shipping. Oh God. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think I've had enough of Chaplow Ross for one day. I think that's enough of Chaplow Ross for me, because goodness gracious, that's insane. That's insane. But it just shows, like, so what really frustrates me, right, as a journalist, is that people don't read these days, right? So people will see a title of like an article and get outraged, and they won't even read the article to even understand what the narrative is, and they'll go straight to Twitter and start trying to cancel. Like, people are like tapped. I don't know if it's like the school system. I don't know what it is, but it's just so bad. Like, people don't even seek comprehension. Like, my instinct, if someone tells me, oh, this person did this or that, my instinct is not, that person's cancelled. My instinct is, let me actually read about it. Let me actually do my research and understand what exactly is going on. My instinct is not, Virgil Abloh donated $50. Let's cancel him. Like, how about actually understand what was going on? How about find out what he said? Like comprehension is so low these days. Like comprehension is at an all-time low. It's really, really bad. I don't know if it's the school system. I don't know what it is, but it's so bad. It's just so, and it's actually quite sad to see. It's really, really sad to observe as just a person. It's really, really sad to just observe. Stuff says it's laziness. It's like, it's just so bad. It's school systems, but also too many things that shorten our attention spans. Oh, and he calls himself a hip hop historian. Oh yeah, I've heard. So I know who Trap Lord Ross is. I know he mainly talks about like hip hop, and he calls himself a hip hop journalist, which is insane. Because I don't know how he does research, but clearly he doesn't do research properly. Because that Virgil Abloh video was all over the place, like absolutely clueless about. He didn't know anything he was talking about. Like he really didn't know what he was talking about. Like he did not have a clue what he was talking about. To call himself a hip hop journalist is anarchy, sacrilege. Like what is that? You said I have responsibility as a fellow Brit. I don't claim Chaplaw Ross. Chaplaw Ross is not even like where. Let me see if does he have a wiki. I'm so sure he's not from London. He's probably from like, you know, one of those like towns in the middle of nowhere in England where no one is cultured. And then he was like listening to like 50 Cent in his bedroom, and now he thinks he knows something about culture and hip hop. That's probably what like Chaplaw Ross is, to be honest. Let me actually, where did Chaplaw Ross grow up? Let's see. I knew it! Chaplaw Ross grew up in a town called Bognor Regis in Sussex. I knew, guys, I'm good at this stuff. I'm good at this stuff. He comes across that way. I just knew it. I just knew it. I just knew it. You can always tell with these people. You can always tell. Because a white person that grows up in London is not goofy like that. And they're not going to call themselves like a hip hop journalist and not really like immerse themselves in the thing properly. I knew it. Bognor Regis in Sussex. I knew it. I knew it. I just knew. I'm joking. To be honest, there's people that could be cultured growing up anywhere, but it's just basically the chances are lower that someone that isn't from a city that is not black understands black culture. So it's like if you're not black but you grew up in like I'm talking about England now. If you grow up in like London or Manchester or Birmingham or Liverpool or Leeds, chances are you're around like Asians and Nigerians and Brazilians and Colombians. So you just have even growing up, you have a good understanding of like different cultures. You listen to different music. So you kind of grow up with an understanding of things. Someone like him that grows up in like, you know, Sussex or wherever the hell he's from, he looks at things as like, which is why he creates content in the way that he does. It's a very, what's the right word to use without being like mean? What's without being mean? Like to him, it seems like hip hop is like a fetish, basically. He treats hip hop like a fetish. That's how he treats hip hop journalism, basically. It's like a fetish to him because it's not like he doesn't get the culture. He doesn't understand what it is, what it means, what it represents, what it's supposed to represent, what it's about, what the essence of it is. So he can only interact with something like hip hop or stuff from a very like, yeah, from that angle. This level of discussion is why Noel Gallagher said YouTubers for morons. Obviously, he has been on the receiving end of such a level of content. Yeah, but he also has the audacity to establish himself as a subject matter expert, which is insane, by the way. Which is insane. Do you know how like insane it is to be like not from America and call yourself like a hip hop expert? Do you know how wild that is? Do you know how insane that is? Do you actually understand how insane that is? Like, there are hip hop experts in America who grew up around hip hop from birth, and they've been studying it at the same time they grew up around it their whole life. And then you have a guy that grew up in Sussex who reads articles online and makes AI generated content that thinks he's an expert on hip hop. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. People are asking if he's ever visited the States. Oh no, he has. He's definitely gone to America loads of times. I think he even lived there at one point. I think he might even live there now, actually. He's definitely been there, but like my point is, calling yourself an expert, all things considered, is insane. Like that's actually insane. That's wild. That's insane. So you're saying if you didn't play, you can't talk about it? No, but you can't be an expert. Like the reason why I'm an expert on fashion is because I studied fashion journalism at fashion school, one of the best fashion schools in the world. And I've worked in fashion for almost going on 10 years. I've worked in the fashion industry. That's what would make you an expert. Not reading articles online. So it's not about if you didn't play, you can't talk about it. But if you're going to, anyone can talk about anything, by the way. But if you're going to call yourself an expert, there has to be certain prerequisites that allows you to call yourself an expert. Like there actually has to, you actually have to have a resume, or you actually have to have some sort of you have to have some sort of like credentials. So he can definitely talk about it. I mean, anyone could talk about anything. That's completely fine. That's what social media is for. But if you're going to like front yourself as I am a hip hop expert, then we're gonna need to see some credentials there, fella. So that's the main difference. Not all of his videos are trash. To be fair, I haven't watched any of his videos beginning to end. I've watched 2 Trap Law Ross videos. This Virgil Abloh one, and the one he made about Central C, which I also thought was kind of stupid. Let me see if I can find that Central C video. 1 second. Yeah, so okay. So is this video here? So the Central C video where, oh yeah, I just realized you guys can't even see it. 1 second. Yeah, so it's this video here, the deadly gang war behind Central C. So it's talking about like his feud with Digga D and how like Central C is not a real gangster, and Digga D is blah 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 blah. Basically, okay. So why? I'll just tell you why I don't care for Trap Law Ross and I like try to ignore him at every turn. Is because I think Trap Law Ross, and this is why I said to him, hip hop is a fetish, right? From what I've heard of Trap Law Ross and the interviews I've seen him, he talked about violence and violence in hip hop. That's like his interest. That's what he likes. And he talks about who's a real gangster, who isn't, who is a real killer, who isn't. Like that's where his content normally goes. And I just think a white guy from Sussex making a fetish over hip hop where he's talking about this person is not a real gangster, this person's a real killer, this person murdered so and so person. It's just that kind of content is just not for me. There's people that it's for, it's just not for me. And like the whole video about Central C is not a real gangster, it's unnecessary because no one thinks Central C is a gangster anyway. No one thinks Central C is a killer. And it's fine because Central C still grew up in the ends. And when you grow up in the ends in London, you're around it. So even if you're not out here murdering people or whatever, you still grow up around it. You know people that have been killed, that have been stabbed to death. And if you're rapping about it, you're rapping about what you've lived. It's like your lived experience. Central C has never called himself, I'm the biggest drug kingpin. He's never said that about himself. So I didn't see why he had to make a 3-hour video trying to discredit, Central C street cred when there's nothing to be discredited. He grew up in the ends. He doesn't call himself Pablo Escobar. So what's the point of the video? Like, so that's why I just don't care for him. I just it's not for me. I know there's a lot of people that like controversy for the sake of controversy online, and they're like, yeah, Central C is not a real gangster. I've been trying to tell people, bro. That's probably what the comments look like if I open that video, but it's just that kind of content is not for me personally. He has an audience, obviously, clearly he gets like millions of views, but I'm just not one of the people that's part of that audience. But anyway, that's that's my take on Trapdoor Ross and his horrible, terrible Virgil Abloh video. But yeah, any more questions, guys? Or any more videos that you want me to react to, so long as it's not by Trapdoor Ross. People who listen to rap care a lot about street credibility and being no. No. Hip hop started as it's kind of like a way for Black people and to a lesser degree Latino people to basically talk about their frustrations through music. That's how hip hop started. So all the like ignorant stuff, all of that came later, but that's not really what hip hop in its true essence is about. Hip hop is not about killing people, and it's not about robbing people and glorifying that. That's not really what the essence of hip hop is, which is why a lot of hip hop fans actually don't like the degeneracy that hip hop espouses a lot of the time, because that's not really what the whole point of hip hop originally was. Like the point of hip hop originally is not to just come out here and be calling women bitches and all that sort of stuff. That's not what it's about. So yeah, it's not. That's not. I think the kind of people that. Do you know something funny actually? And this is something that's quite funny. I think most times actually the kind of people that I see that care the most about street credibility and rappers being real killers, and if that matters, is actually normally like the suburban kids that are very far removed from like any of like that sort of stuff anyway. So it's almost like they fetishize it because they're so far away from it. They're kind of intrigued by that kind of life, so they're obsessed with it. Yeah, so you just made my point. I mean, in certain circles, not general audience, younger men, white, Latino, and Black, do gravitate towards that. It's the kind of people a lot of times that suburban kids Like exactly like drill. Most of the people that are really obsessed with the stories and lives of drill rappers are like suburban teenagers and stuff. So you find that the people that are really like obsessed with all that like crazy stuff, it tends to be kids that grew up so far removed from it anyway. That's kind of what it tends to be. There are people named Joshua from Orange County calling Gunner a rat. That's funny. That's actually hilarious. Like it's not. Do you know why I know that it's those kind of people that fetishize it, right? Because like I always tell people this, right? I grew up middle class, but the thing about London is that London is kind of a weird city. It's not like America because America is like divided by like neighborhoods and like suburbs and stuff. So there's like good neighborhoods and like bad neighborhoods. London is like that to an extent. Like there's places where there are good neighborhoods, like Kensington, but a lot of places there's like a middle class road and then a council estate around the corner, and then an upper class road around the corner, and then a middle class road around the corner. So like everyone kind of lives side by side. So even though I grew up middle class, there was literally where I grew up in Lewisham in London, southeast London, there was a council estate that was made of red bricks right around the corner from my house. And there was a gang in that estate that was called the Red Brick Gang, literally. And I've seen people get stabbed by people in that gang. Like I've seen loads of stuff happen. I've even almost been stabbed myself. So because I've experienced that, I don't glorify it. I don't think that's a nice situation to be in. So when you've been there, it's not something that you glorify or you fetishize, or you're like, oh, this person's a real killer or not a killer. Because your perspective is, I would rather everyone just lives in peace because you've seen the bad effects. My neighbor was stabbed to death, literally. Where I grew up, someone who lived across the street from me was stabbed to death, literally. Like my neighbor is dead, literally. So when you grow up around it, you wouldn't glorify it because you've seen the negative effects. So from someone who has experienced stuff like that, I know when someone is making it a fetish or they're glorifying it, that's the perspective they come from. I just know immediately. I just know. So that's why I always feel that way about Chapel Ross. He's like the typical suburban kid who like is obsessed with like killing because he grew up in a nice home and he hasn't actually been around anything that's like bad. Said, yep, I live in a council estate next to a crazy posh road. Like as in the cheese and wine shops, everyone is on top of each other here. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's definitely more of a suburban thing because in their boredom, they crave fantasy city life of violence and crime. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to glorify about violence. There's absolutely nothing to glorify about. It's not funny. It's not something that I would glorify ever. It's just not any of those things. So I still don't really know what a council estate looks like, and I've lived in London my whole life. Never been to one or know anyone who lives in one. Fair enough. I mean, where I grew up, like I was talking about that red brick council estate, close to where I live. So when I went to school, everyone in the area just goes to schools in the area. So I went to school with a lot of kids that grew up in that estate, even though I didn't grow up there. So that's kind of how London is in a lot of areas. They think they want to live in Gotham City. Exactly. And exactly this, yeah, hip hop was essentially political and frustration about circumstances. Yeah, exactly. Talking about police brutality and stuff like that. I think in the UK it became very bait when we moved from grime and trap to drill. Yeah. Yeah. AP says, makes sense. Thank you for saying that here from Brooklyn. You understand. That's fine. That's a random pause. That's crazy. That's so funny. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. The Nectar Mouse. I don't know what a council estate looks like. Lucky you. Yeah, London has changed for the better, and I'm quite happy about it. Obviously, there's a sad part of like some people getting displaced, but in terms of like danger, because when I was younger, let me not even. Anyways, after hours, I can tell you some stories of like when I grew up and stuff that happened. But like, geez, like when I was younger, there was a time when BMXs were being robbed just randomly. There was just people just robbing people. London is kind of weird. There's times when they just do stuff. So there's a time when people are being attacked with acid. So there was a time in London when if you're driving, you can't roll down your windows because a random person could just throw acid in your face for no reason. There was a time when I was younger when people were stealing BMXs. So I was riding my BMX when I was younger, and just a kid, just riding, enjoying life, taking in the breeze, enjoying the lovely summer sun. And then two guys like, yo, and I looked back and then I saw them, and then I looked forward and then I saw them, and then they just started chasing me. And then I was cycling for my life, trying to get away from them, like cycling for my life. There was a time when so close to where I live, you said mistake, he looked back. You're in shock because you don't expect stuff like that to happen. It's really random. There's close to where I live, because well, not where I live, but where I grew up, Lewisham. So there's a shopping center called Lewisham Shopping Center. If you're from Southeast London, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't know how many people here are actually from Southeast London, but there's a shopping center called Lewisham Shopping Center. One time, I was literally just like buying, maybe I was like buying sportswear or something in the shopping center. And then I left and I was walking to the bus station. And I kid you not, like 15 guys came up to me and just pushed me on the wall for no reason. And were like, yo, what's your name? And I was like, Ayo. And they're like, no, I don't believe you. Your name's Matt. We think you're Matt. And I'm like, bro, whoever you think I am, I'm just not that person, bro. I'm just not, I'm not involved in gangs. I'm not involved with what you're involved with. Whoever you think I am, I'm just not that person. And then they were like convinced that I was who they were looking for. And then one guy brought out a knife and was like, why are you lying? Why are you lying? And this is a situation I was saying where I almost got stabbed, right? I was like, why are you lying? Why are you lying? And then someone was like, check his pockets. So then they checked my pockets and like took out my wallet and then like looked at my ID and then saw my name and then saw that I wasn't who they were looking for. And then they all left me. Then there was a time, see, Beji knows. Then there was a time when it was postcode wars. So different gangs were based on like postcodes in London. So if you're from a certain area, just stay in your area. Because if you wander into a random area of London and people stop you and they're like, where are you from? What's your postcode? And you say the wrong postcode, and it's a postcode that they're beefing with, you might get stabbed for no reason. So, that's why. Now I'm going to say something insane to you guys, right? Because this is like stuff I haven't probably talked about ever. I never actually knew what London really looked like until I was like an older teenager, because I didn't go to many places in London because I was just scared. Because I was just like, bro, I'm not trying to get involved in all of this stuff. So I'll just stay in my area where like people know who I am and I'm safe. So it wasn't until I was like 17, 18. Well, okay, maybe not that late. When I was like, let's say 14, 15, where I was like going to central London and I was like oh, this is what Oxford Street looks like. Oh, this is what like this place looks like. Oh, this is like Brent Cross. Oh, this is like this area. Like this is that. Like I did not start going around London till I was like reselling Supreme and stuff. And I was going to central London, obviously. And that was when I first started like going to central London. It like literally as a child, I just didn't. As a kid, I just didn't. Someone said Croydon is still ghetto. I was there for holiday and I saw 5 fights in 30 minutes. Jeez. My cousin got stabbed because he was visiting our grandma in Brixton. He was from Peckham, not even in. Yeah, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you're just from the wrong area, like I know so many people that have been stabbed for that exact reason. If you're just from the wrong area, or you're around the wrong friends. So this is why. So my natural instinct is to cut people off very easily, and it's like trauma from my childhood, because as a kid, if you're around the wrong, where I grew up, if you're around the wrong people, you get into trouble for no reason. So say like I'm hanging out with kids that are from that red brick estate that I was talking about earlier, but they have beef with a gang in a different area. Now, if that gang comes to this area and they see me with these people, they're going to assume that I'm one of them and they're going to come after all of us collectively. So that's why I remember when I was in university in Leeds. This is before I went to CSM. When I was studying chemical engineering in Leeds, I made these like friends in school, and they were like these like typical like, I don't know why they behave this way, but they were the typical suburban kids that tried to act like they were hard, but they weren't, and they were like overdoing it. And I don't know why they felt the need to do that. I don't know why. So one time they beat someone and he almost went unconscious. And I remember like when I was standing there, my life flashed between my eyes like, if something happens to this guy, this is like joint enterprise. I don't know if you guys know what joint enterprise is. It's like a law in the UK where like if something happens to someone, like someone gets like badly beaten or something, everyone that's there just gets charged collectively, basically. And I was like, I need to cut these people off. And I never ever like spoke to them again. And I like cut all of them off. So like that's why I cut people off, because I don't like being around problematic people, because I think if I'm around someone that's problematic, by association, they're going to bring problems to me. So that's why I cut people off really quickly. So Aya's parents did win initially by forcing a boy in a STEM law degree. That's funny. But yeah, the joint enterprise thing is really crazy. That law is insane. It's really crazy. But yeah, those are some stories from my childhood. Stories from the childhood. Roadman, on somewhat of a lighter note, have you seen the Nigerian designer I am Isigo? Yes, of course. Why? Is there something that you think specifically about the brand? Let me put them on the screen. They had a decently notable show at Copenhagen Fashion Week. Okay, that's interesting. I haven't really kept up with what they're doing. I'm just aware of the brand. But that's really cool though, that they're doing like some really cool stuff at Copenhagen Fashion Week. That's a fashion week I really want to go to. I've never been to Copenhagen Fashion Week. I really want to go. I definitely need to like try and see if I can make that work. Because Copenhagen in general, I like Copenhagen as a place. It's really nice. He said, "You've now earned the name Fashion Roadman." You do know my name is my name for a reason. It's not because I'm an actual roadman, but it's just it's basically so when I first got into fashion, I felt like my worldview is so different to the typical person that like works in fashion that my name has to represent that in a way. Which is how I came up with Fashion Roadman. But I wouldn't call myself a roadman. I'm not like a gangster. I'm definitely none of that stuff. They won the Zalando Award. Ooh, that's really cool. Shout out to them. Oh yeah, powered by Zalando. Do you know what the prize is for the Zalando Award? I'm just curious. And yeah, Steph, Copenhagen is definitely a lovely place. Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Roadman don't actually call themselves a roadman. Yeah, it'll be kind of cringe if you're an actual roadman, you call yourself a roadman. That's cringe as hell. Are there any new London brands that you currently have your eye on at the moment? Yeah, Charlie Constantino, if any of you know who that is. Let me put his IG on. I really like his work. Yeah, this guy here, Charlie. Charlie's really cool. Like, just love his work. Like, his textiles are chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. So yeah, I like his brand. I really like Charlie's work. I'm trying to think. London brands. Yeah, he does sell at DSM. He does sell at DSM. He is stocked at DSM. There's so many. I don't even know how to start with London. There's like, let me see. Who do I want to show you guys? Should I gatekeep? I'm joking. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many like Yaku, and there's like the Ooze. So when it comes to London, or like UK based people, I don't just look at like fashion. I look at like accessories and like. So like, there's this brand here that I follow. They make like fine jewelry. That's like a jewelry brand, but they have like a really interesting casting technique that they use. So it's like it has this like rough look to it that's like really cool. So I'm like accessories wise, I really like the way that they make jewelry. It's really like different. So they're like really cool. Why are people trying to change the topic? This is a really good discussion. Let it flow. Gatekeeping is back. So many people trying to copy and paste, get your own style, bro. No, I'm not watching Project Runway, unfortunately. So Project Runway, don't shoot me. It's something I've actually never ever watched. I know, crazy fashion person, never watched Project Runway. It's because I just never watched it, and it's just like it would be impossible to catch up because that's way too much time that I'm not willing to invest in Project Runway. So yeah, I'm not watching it. Do let me know what happens. Do I wear jewelry? Not really. It's mainly because I can't afford it, to be honest. There's a lot of jewelry that I like and I would like to have. I just can't afford most of it. You guys know I've featured this person on the channel, but there's a brand from Turkey, I actually found out about them when I went to Istanbul, called Begum Khan, which is so cool. Like they make this sort of like Ottoman Empire inspired jewelry. And it's like so cool. But once again, cannot afford it. But like, so turtles are my favorite animals. So one day I want to like commission them to like make me some like custom like turtle pieces. You got the Year of the Dragon earrings. Oh, that's fire. That's actually fire. Luke said an actual person wouldn't watch Project Runway. Really? My understanding is that everyone in fashion watches it. Like people are like, yeah, Project Runway is back. It's like RuPaul's Drag Race. Like I've never watched that before. And I feel kind of bad because it feels like as a fashion person, should like literally this happens all the time where I'm at Fashion Week and my friends, especially my gay friends, they're referencing something that happened in RuPaul's Drag Race, and I literally have no idea what's going on. Like, no idea. They're like, "Do you remember when?" Da, 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 da? And I'm just like, I'm like, not really. Never really watched it. Oh my god, Luke, you're a savage. He said, "I need to get new gay friends." Damn. Luke, what happened to supporting your fellow gay men? Luke says both of those shows are for the brainless demographics. Luke being Luke. Savage, as always. Yeah, but I really like Begum Khan. Yeah, it's really cool. I'll be back in Turkey towards the end of October. When will you be back there? So funny enough, the company I work for, we like obviously because most fashion brands anyway, you like produce all over the world, like Italy, Japan, Turkey. So I might be going to Turkey for like more of like a work trip. And probably sometime this year, to be fair. If not this year, early next year. Now, why do you ask him that? Oh my gosh. No, Istanbul is so nice. Like I love Istanbul so much. I've only been there once, but I had a time. I had a great time in Istanbul. And I was there for a really long time. I was there for 10 days. So I had enough time to like see a lot of people, meet a lot of people, go to a lot of places. It was really nice. Also, Tarek, thank you very much for the donation, by the way. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Okay, guys, any more fashion questions or I'm gonna have to disappear? Any more fashion questions? Oh, I love that rough look. I only hit us with a take me back for Istanbul. What can I say? What can I say? No, great life crew, young the night shenanigans, love bless. Yeah. I think I'm going to call it tonight, guys. But thank you very much for tuning in, especially because the time is really random. This is the most random time I've ever streamed. I'm so surprised how many people are like actually watching. because this is probably the worst. Like, if you check my YouTube analytics, this is literally the worst time I could possibly be streaming. Like, quite literally. I could even show you. Wait 1 second. Let me pull up my analytics. 1 sec. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one. So this is literally what my analytics looks like. So you can see the pale is like when the least amount of your viewers are online. And like, this is now it's 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, which would be like here. So it's like the worst time to stream. Like, if I wanted to stream, I'm supposed to stream here, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm quite surprised. We also aren't normal YouTube viewers. That's funny. Let's talk about the trash that is Vogue September. Yeah, I've already bashed that in my short video. I'll give them a break. I'll give them a break. You haven't been streaming, so the analytics don't matter. Is that a thing? Is that a thing? He's probably up cheating me watching this live. Yeah, is that a thing? I assumed that when I hopped on live, most people would be sleeping. And then when I come off the live, people comment like, "Oh my God, I missed the live. Why did you stream at such a random time?" That's probably still going to happen. But yeah. But anyway, guys, I shall be seeing you in the next stream. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Please follow me on Twitch. Please follow me on Twitch. The main reason why I actually want to follow me on Twitch, I'll give you an incentive, is because Twitch sends out notifications properly. So you will know when I stream, and then you can decide to continue watching it on Twitch or on YouTube. It's your choice. But Twitch is actually really good at sending notifications, whereas YouTube is garbage at that. So that's why I always ask people to follow me on Twitch. That's if you want to keep up with the streams. And also, if you want to watch the streams back, I normally post them on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, you can follow me on there too. But without further ado, thank you very much for tuning in. See you guys later.